Entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to come out of executive session and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Entertain a motion to seal the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to seal the minutes in a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Entertain a motion to adjourn the executive session.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Clerk, motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll. No roll. We are closed. We'll start the council meeting in about 2 minutes. Just came out of executive session. Give us a couple minutes to straighten out. All right, I'd like to call the February Cranston City Council meeting to order. Clerk, please take the roll.
Present.
Present. Present. Present.
Present. Everyone, please stand and join me in saluting our flag and giving the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So good evening, everyone. Today we have public acknowledgments and commendations, of which there is one. Our Accreditation Commission presents the Certificate of Reaccreditation to the Cranston Police Department. Mayor Fung, would you like the floor?
Sure. Turn over to the colonel.
Mayor Fung, Mr. President, honorable members of the Cranston City Council, it's an honor and a pleasure here to present to your fine police department tonight their state accreditation. They have worked hard, they have overcome challenges, and they have succeeded. And you ought to be rightly proud of the presentation that we're going to make tonight. I have with me tonight the Executive Director of the State Accreditation Commission, retired Captain Christine Crocker, and I'll let Christine just give you a very quick picture of how challenging this process is, and I'm sure that once again you'll be very appreciative of what your police department does for you in many ways. Christine.
Thank you, Colonel. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here to award the Cranston Police Department with their first reaccreditation with the State Accreditation Commission. To give you some idea of what exactly accreditation is, much like hospitals and universities and schools have standards that they must adhere to, that's what we have created for law enforcement here in Rhode Island, so that they're adhering to nationally recognized best practices. And not that attaining accreditation is any easy task, but you're putting your system in place with your promise that moving forward, these are the things that you're going to do, and you provide proofs of compliance. To attain reaccreditation is an extremely hard thing to do, because now you have to make sure you're doing what you said you do, that you're following those best practices and providing those proofs. And the Cranston Police Department has done that. You should be very, very proud of the men and women of this agency. and Colonel Winquist. I've had the pleasure of working with several of them on model policies for all of law enforcement throughout the state. They're a great resource, and again, I'm very proud of them. Congratulations, Colonel, to you and your staff. Thank you very much, and again, you have a great police department. You should be very proud of them. Thank you.
Colonel, the Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission, hereby be it known that the Cranston Police Department has voluntarily complied with all the required standards as set forth by the Commission and is hereby awarded their certificate of reaccreditation effective this 27th day of February 2017, and hereby shall be recognized as an accredited agency for a term of 3 years. Congratulations to you, and certainly congratulations, Mayor Fung. You ought to be real proud of your police department.
I first want to thank Colonel McCartney and Director Crocker for coming here tonight to make a public presentation for our reaccreditation. As Director Crocker mentioned, it's a long and arduous process to get reaccredited, and all the credit goes to the men to my left here are in our accreditation unit at the police department. It's not a very fun task to sit there and collect proofs and pieces of paper and make sure we're following all our policies, but it's critical to make sure that we are in the top of law enforcement here in the state. So now we are nationally accredited, and we're also state reaccredited. So very proud, and thank you for the support from Mayor Fung and his administration as well, and to the public who supports us every day. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. I just want to, first of all, thank the Colonel and Christine for being back here again in our great city of Cranston and reaccrediting our police department. I want to just take a moment to thank not only the accreditation team, Colonel Winquist, but most importantly, the men and women who wear the uniform every single day, making sure we have a safe community and doing it to the highest standards possible, not only in Rhode Island, but standards all across the country. So thank you, Colonel. Keep up the great work, and thank you to all the men and women in blue serving us every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Majors, Captains, Sergeants, Patrolmen. Great work. So I see a lot of people in the audience tonight, which is great. I'm going to ask that everybody try to squeeze in where they can so we can get as many of you seated as possible, just in case the fire department comes in and we're violating fire code laws, because we can't have a lot of you stand back there. So try to sit down wherever possible. Thank you. We're going into... Yeah, guys, fill in. People standing in the back, if there's seats, I need you to fill in and sit down where you can. So in the front row, there's a couple seats. Second row, third row on this side, over there. Some of the people in the back aren't moving. If we can't find seats, could you please? Because if we can't find seats, we actually have to have you sit outside, and I'm trying to get you guys seats in the building before.
Excuse me, we have several seats in the second row, please. This row here. There.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And let's see here.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we take public hearings, I'd like to have a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right, so we have public hearings now on any docketed matter, so if you're here to speak on any docketed matter, now would be the time. We're going to hold comments to 4 minutes tonight, which is the usual for our rules. So Attorney Murray, if you'd like to go first, then I have a sign-in sheet. His name is first on the sheet, so we'll go through the sheet, and then once we get through with the sheet, we'll let everybody else come in and speak. Okay, so I just got word from the Director of Administration, if you're standing, you have to go in the hallway. There are seats out in the hallway. So anyone standing in the back of the room, we'll need you to go to the hall. We'll turn the speakers on so you can hear everything that's happening in the room. For those out there, if you can hear on the speakers, if you'd like to speak, please come in, and we'll hold it open at the end for you to come in and speak. Attorney Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Council President, members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Robert Murray. I'm an attorney with the firm of Taft McSally, located at 21 Garden City Drive in Cranston. I'm here tonight on behalf of the ownership of the Garden City Shopping Center and the Wilder Companies, the management company for the shopping center. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to talk about Ordinance 1-17-10. It's an ordinance which we submitted to establish a framework for future consideration and development of the Garden City Shopping Center. I know there's considerable public interest in this ordinance. We did appear before the Ordinance Committee 11 days ago and made a full presentation. I believe that evening all members of the council were present, even those that weren't on the Ordinance Committee. It's not our intention to, again, make a full presentation, but by the same token, I believe there are people here tonight that weren't present that evening, and in fairness to them, we want to just do an abbreviated, quick overview of the ordinance and the intentions. I want to just note for the record, Mr. Thomas Wilder's here this evening. He is the principal of Wilder Company, the management company. He is going to speak in a few minutes. Mr. Joseph Cashel, the general manager of the shopping center, is here to answer any questions and be a resource. Ms. Kelly Burke is the vice president for development services for the Wilder Company, and she's involved in the actual permitting and construction of activities, not just at the Garden City Center, but throughout all the holdings that the Wilder Company is involved in throughout the country. We also have Greg Guglielmo from Dupree Engineering, who's not planning on speaking, but is available as a resource. I want to first thank the mayor and the members of the City Council. Over the last several days and week, members of the council and the mayor have shared with me and Garden City interesting comments and concerns expressed by some people who are not only in the room this evening, but other residents. We made a good faith attempt to communicate to all of them. We had the pleasure of meeting with numerous people over the last week to try and, on a one-on-one basis, talk about their concerns and kind of what the philosophy of this ordinance is. We were able to do that, and we want to thank the council for allowing us to engage those people. We certainly want to thank the residents who were nice enough to make time out of their busy days to speak to us. This discussion hopefully was enlightening for everybody on both sides, and I've tried to keep the council informed as to issues that were discussed. I know that you have all received over the last several days by way of email a letter from the planning director about the future steps that would have to be taken for any development in the shopping center. This is not the beginning and the end of anything. Nobody's giving us a blank check to do anything. I provided you a series of questions and answers to try and encapsulate all the comments that, the theme of the comments that we received from neighbors, and try and, on paper, establish our response for your edification. We just tried to be certain to be responsive wherever possible. So I want to thank again all the elected officials and the residents who are willing to share their thoughts with us. With that, Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Mr. Thomas Wilder of the Wilder Companies. He would just like to give a broad overview of the philosophy behind this ordinance. He's probably the one gentleman who is as responsible for the vision of the Garden City Center, what's happened over the last 7 to 8 years since Garden City has been reincarnated, and he will be at the tiller of any future development that we move forward with. Mr. Wilder.
Thank you, Bob. Again, Tom Wilder with the Wilder Companies. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a great ride here at Garden City. You know, it hasn't been easy. We took over back in 2008, 2009, and I remember very distinctly meeting with the mayor in his office, and we had a vision at the time. We spent about 6 months doing our analysis on the market and opportunities, and we actually had a merchandising plan and showed the mayor what we were thinking about. And you know, at the time we had a vacant linens, a vacant circuit, and we knew Borders wasn't going to make it, and we had about another 50,000 square feet of vacancy. And we said to the mayor, we're going to bring in Crate and Barrel, L.L. Bean, Pottery Barn, J. Crew, and Lululemon. And he said, really? So he chuckled a little bit, and I said, no, we believe that that's the opportunity here. We think it's going to take some time, but we think we can actually outposition Providence Place because we have the gem in the marketplace. We have the open-air, iconic destination that's fallen on difficult times, but it's still got great bones. It still has a great location. It's still a tremendous community. And we think, given time and support from the community and from the local government, that we could accomplish that. And it probably took a little bit longer than we'd hoped. We kind of went through a little Great Recession in between, but I think we've been very, very successful. The center today is thriving. And that's despite what's going on in a very tumultuous retail world. Everybody reads about Macy's closing stores, Dillard's closing stores, Saks hurting, Macy's and Kmart and Sears. And so we're seeing it every day, the impact on both the department stores and the small stores. And what we're trying to do, with this overlay district is think about, all right, what happens over the next 10 years? How do we insulate ourselves? How do we continue to evolve? Because if we don't evolve, you get hurt. And we saw that back in early 2000s. Garden City did not evolve, and it got hurt. So the next round is, all right, as we're so negative about, not so negative about retail, but we think the amount of retail space is going to be shrinking nationally over the next 10 years. Where do you bring in the opportunities to maintain the kind of vitality of centers like Garden City? And what we're doing and what you're seeing across the country is we're now starting to introduce different uses. And it's more of a live, work, play environment. And there's a great desire for people to live closer to these kinds of destinations, to stay for longer periods of time at hotel facilities in these types of destinations. There's more entertainment uses. There's obviously you're seeing more dining uses. And that's just a reflection of kind of the world today and how it's evolved. So that's really what we set out to try to do here, is create this framework to allow us to think about those changes. We don't have any plans today for a hotel or a 100-foot building or residential on Midway. This is really just a thoughtful approach to have, you know, for the next 10 years, can we be thinking about where the opportunities may be to add value, to enhance what is a gem. And honestly, we do not want to mess with what we've done, because we've done a very good job and it's really doing well. What we want to do is try to add some of those components, some of those pieces that will help it to maintain its vitality in the marketplace. And so that's really, it's really the goal here. And what I think maybe there's a little misconception, because I've done this a bunch of times. We just did this up in Boston too, where we went through an overlay district. And what people need to realize is that this is a zoning overlay. It doesn't give us as of right. There's still a very rigid permitting process that we're going to have to go through. And we fully expect, if we come back and say, you know, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, we want to do a 70-foot building, we better have our ducks in a row to say why. And it better be beautiful and it better be iconic, but we are going to have to be able to support that. And we know we're going to have to go through that rigorous process. So again, we're not here to say that we're prepared to to do any of these right away. What we want to be prepared to do is give us the ability to think about those, because I think people ask, well, why don't you just come and ask? And you can get a variance. But, variance process is very, very difficult. Any developer will tell you that to spend the time and energy to plan, to say, oh, when you have a 35-foot height and you want to do a 45-foot building, it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy and commitment, and a lot of developers will just pass on that ability. And honestly, if we're trying to attract a hotel or a residential developer, they're not going to come along for the ride and say, oh, we think we can get the variance. This allows us to create that framework, again, to think about those uses and those opportunities. So I wanted to just hit right on just a couple of things, the height. My father always said to me, because he was a developer as well, and he said, look, Tom, just tell the truth. That way you don't have to remember what you said. And I thought that was great. So to tell the truth, I don't know if 100 feet is the right height. I do know that if we come back and say we think it is, we're going to have to, again, prove it and show that it's the right height, that it fits within the context of the existing center. So I don't know if that's exact. I could tell you building 100 feet is very expensive. I mean, today, hotels are coming in at 5 and 6 stories because you can do, it's called stick-built. Once you get up over 6 stories, you're doing steel, and honestly, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to do 100 feet at that stage. But again, we felt this kind of gave us a framework to work within. Midway. I have a thing about Midway. I think that's a terrible gateway to both the community and to our shopping center. And I've always said to Joe, look, anytime we get an opportunity to upgrade Midway, I'd like to do that. And we're trying to activate the edges. We're trying to activate the post office area, create some additional retail spaces there. We have this really just kind of lonesome parking lot out there that right now is being used. And I can't say we could give it up right away because the post office uses it. Some of our office tenants use it. But again, thinking longer term, to me, I'd love to activate that street. And activating that street says to me, build something like's happened behind us with the school, that, 2-3 stories. Activate the edges, bring some landscaping, make it feel more of a gateway, which is really what it's become. It's not a cut-through. We have a lot of our customers who use that as an entrance. I mean, we know a lot of the residential folks use that to enter the neighborhood as well. So we think that's a very positive thing. And we are limited, by the way, to, I think it's 3 stories above perhaps ground floor retail. I don't ever see ground floor retail there, honestly. But again, the height and the scale is meant to be in keeping with other developments around us. A parking deck, honestly, I know there were concerns about a parking deck. Honestly, that's the last thing we want to do. Parking decks are incredibly expensive. And actually, the world's going the opposite way because of autonomous cars, Zipcar, Uber. We're actually seeing parking requirements being reduced, and especially when you start to add residential on your site, you're reducing the number of trips for those residents. So again, it was something we felt we might need if we wanted to build something. There was a small podium with a parking deck, or if we wanted to bury some parking. We felt it wasn't clear whether we had that right or not. So again, they're very expensive. They're not the most attractive things. It's probably the last thing we want to do. But again, this was about building in flexibility. So I thank you for listening to me, and I'm hoping that we'll get some great feedback, and I really appreciate the love and care that people feel for this shopping center, the loyalty. It's amazing. It's been great to work on it and great to work with the community, and we look forward to working with the community for the next 10 years to make sure we maintain its vitality. So thank you.
Mr. President, just very briefly, if I could just highlight some of the technical aspects of the ordinance, because there are people here who weren't at the ordinance committee. I won't take long, but as Tom said, this ordinance was intended to be a template, a framework for future consideration for the shopping center. He was very candid in terms of timing. There is and I think most people that met with us understand this. We're not here today with any concrete plans, but Unlike other overlay districts your predecessor councils have approved in the area for the training school, the Citizens Bank building, you did those, rightfully so in my opinion, because they were appropriate for an overlay district, but you did it with a lot less information than we have today. We're not asking you to take us on faith, our promise to do something. I'm asking you to look at the 49 acres of land, look at the 500,000 square feet of building, and if you want to know what the future is going to look like, we have a proven product. And that's what we hope the residents and the council will recognize, is that we have an established track record, and nobody, the ownership, the management of this center is going to do anything to jeopardize this. I'm a big football fan. We all know the Patriots won the Super Bowl. You don't see the Super Bowl champions announcing they're making major wholesale changes to their organization. What they're doing is they're going to be fine-tuning, making refinements, making some small changes, but they're the paradigm of football organizations. You just don't throw that out the window when you win a Super Bowl. We have the paradigm of shopping centers in the Northeast. We have something that members of this council, the mayor, refers to as a jewel. Members of the community refer to as a jewel. Why in God's name would we do anything to put that at risk? We're asking to work with us in the future, and we will deliver on our promise to make it even a more iconic shopping center. This is not a blank check. Nobody's asking for carte blanche to do anything tonight. All, as Mr. Weil said, we're asking for a framework. Mr. Lepola, the planning director, last week circulated a letter to the council detailing 3 pages the types of approval processes we would have to go through in order to do anything going forward. I'm not talking about a small change of a facade of a building. I'm talking about anything that is considered a major land development has to go through the planning commission. It has to go through public hearings, public comment, notice to abutters, advertisements. So we're not going to sneak in some 50,000 square foot building without people knowing about it. And we welcome that public process. Beyond the planning commission, the city has a development plan review committee, which requires, the ordinance sets forth detailed requirements so the city departments can review any plans that we have to do. And if we get through all that, and this public notice to abutters in that process, if we get through that, we then have to go through a building permit process with meeting the building code, fire codes, public works, and everything else. So tonight is not the last step of the future of development of Garden City. It's barely the beginning. I think that there is, so I want to make certain that everybody understands we're not asking you to, tonight you're not signing off us popping up 100-foot buildings all over the place. That's not going to happen. There is, but you need to, the people, I became a creature of social media over the last, since my son got married, and I now look at his wedding pictures on Facebook and all that stuff. There are some good thoughts that are being shared on Facebook with people expressing their love for Garden City. I think it's not only a shopping center, but the area. The ownership loves this $100 million asset. The management company, Joe Cashel, works his heart off to keep this going. So, we're all invested in this. But the ordinance itself is just a broad overlay which sets forth some specifics. In terms of land uses, I'm not going to list all the new ones because most of them are incidental. But obviously the major one is introducing multifamily residential use into the center at some point in the future, as Tom said, so that people who may want to live there and shop there could do so. I was involved in the St. Mark's School project. I think everybody acknowledges that came out very nice. The old school has 20 units, the new building has 29, and it was absolutely a nice transition between the shopping center and the shopping center, between the shopping center and the neighborhood. The uses that we're talking about here, most of them are, not of concern. We listed the parking structure. We listed the parking structure just so there'd be no confusion that we could do one. If you ask the building official, the administration today, we could do a parking structure today. We were transparent. We put it in the schedule of uses, and we're hoping that the council will see fit to allow us to do that. With respect to dimensional regulations, we're going to abide by all the regulations for the long-established C3 zoning that we have, except where it differs within this ordinance. So the major one is the height, as Tom expressed. We're just looking for, kind of a maximum that we could work towards, or work, know that that would be permitted. But there are built-in protections here that the planning department required. The taller you go, the further the setbacks have to be from residential uses. So this is not a, just go and build a 100-foot building. And we're not, some of the neighbors thought we were perhaps going to add floors onto the village buildings near my office. I mean, the buildings wouldn't support that. And why would you take away from this beautiful village concept with these stores that are 1.5 stories? That's not the plan. We are asking permission to have a drive-through window if one of our retailers or restaurants wanted to do that. We're not talking about plopping down a drive-through restaurant in the middle of the shopping center. First of all, it would take away from the center. It would cause problems with our existing tenants, our parking field. We're talking about, if we wanted to put a drive-through window on an end cap, perhaps, for a future tenant, we might be able to do that. There's been considerable discussion about signage. The big one is the electronic display sign up on New London Avenue. Everybody knows that's an old, antiquated, rusted structure. We've asked permission here to convert that to a high-quality, high-definition sign. The ordinance, the planning department made its building very specific requirements, when it can operate, automatic dimming controls. It's going to be state-of-the-art, but it's not, as Joe says, we're not going to be shooting fireworks, dancing bears, dancing reindeer on the sign. That's not going to happen. An image will come up with one of, and it's only for our stores. We can't advertise off-site, Tasker Ford, or anybody else. It's only for the shopping center, and the specific hours of operation when we could do it. And then the last part of the ordinance just updates the signage ordinance so that, particularly in the area of wall signages, it brings us in line with most other communities and what the standards are. The last thing the ordinance does talk a little bit about parking standards. We would be able to go to a 4 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, gross leasing area. And those are the highlights of the ordinance we're talking about. I want to just finally just discuss just some of the comments that we've received from neighbors. They've heard this. I shared with you a question and answer sheet today. But I've already gone over, nobody's giving us a blank check. People want to know where you're going to put a hotel. We don't have a hotel to build. But as Tom would tell you, the hotel has to make sense. It has to make sense in terms of location within the center. We not only have to make certain that we attract new good tenants to the center, we are very concerned about our existing tenants. So not only are the residents invested in the center, we have existing tenants with leases that we have to make certain they thrive and they're happy with anything we do. The Midway Road discussion that we've heard, I understand if you live along Poplar Drive, you're wondering what would happen there. We could build commercial buildings there today. We haven't done that, and we have no plans to. The planning department and the planning commission said, if there's going to be future development there, we prefer that it be residential. And so we put in the ordinance that we could only have 3 floors of living space, similar to what the new Garden City new Garden City apartments on the old asphalt of the school property is. We'd have to meet certain setbacks, and that's a consideration. Everybody has to understand. We are giving up something here, but we're willing to do it because not only we're trying to cooperate with the city, but it makes sense and it fits into the character of what we're trying to do. The last issue I just want to talk about is, because the question and answer speak for themselves, is that some of these new uses we're introducing, I think Tom explained it, they are intended to accentuate what's there today, and If you like the Garden City Shopping Center today, I encourage everybody to embrace this ordinance, to work with us so that the dialogue can continue with the community, and we will have a framework to know where we can go over the next 5 to 10 years. Nothing's going to, as I told some of the neighbors as we met last week, you know, change to this shopping center comes slowly, for economic reasons, but you can't change this shopping center overnight. It's like turning an aircraft carrier. It has to happen slowly, and that's what will happen going forward. But plenty of public comment, public input, public agendas, input from the regulatory bodies in this city. The last thing I will say, and then I will sit down, is I lost my train of thought, I apologize. The last thing I want to say is that there is a chance here to be part of something very special. And the administration, the councils in the past have supported Garden City. The residents have supported Garden City. The last thing we want to do is be intrusive to anybody. Our shoppers live in the Garden City area. Personally, on traffic, and that's the last topic I want to mention, on traffic, we heard concerns about Saconaset Crossroads. We acknowledge that there are times during the day and during the year, traffic on Saconaset Crossroads can be heavy. We, in some small part, contribute to that. Our traffic is a little different because we have so many points of egress and ingress. We kind of get dispersed onto Garden City Drive, New London Avenue, onto Midway Road, Hillside Road. So we're fortunate in that way. There is going to be future development across the street on Saconaset that we're not involved in. We've urged the city, the planning department, there needs to be a real strategic plan on how we're going to handle traffic going forward on Saconaset. We acknowledge that. We're happy to be part of the discussion. But there is, as development of those parcels come forward, there needs to be an intellectual approach here, and everybody has to understand what's being proposed, how it's going to impact traffic, and the last thing we want to do is make it worse. For me personally, as a property owner in the city and someone very familiar with the center, I think when the Citizens Bank building empties next year and moves to Johnston, the whole character of the traffic is going to change. And then the test will be for this council and this administration, what will happen with the future Citizens Bank building and how will that impact? Personally, I think it's going to be less intrusive if they're talking about retail and residential, but we're not sitting here with blinders on. The Saconaset Crossroads is not an issue. When you get down to the Pontiac Avenue interchange, something has to happen there. And so we're happy to be part of the discussion. Everything we've done, we've produced traffic studies to convince the city agencies that we weren't negatively impacting anything further, and we'll continue to do that. And the last point that I want to make, Kelly Burke told me this the other day. Everybody thinks Garden City has really come back over the last 7 to 8 years. In the 500,000 square feet of space that we have, we've added 13,000 square feet in the last 7 to 8 years, principally the Pottery Barn and J. Crew building next to a VO. The LA Fitness building was a replacement in kind because we took the borders down. But everything else that's been done in Garden City has been working with the existing facades. The next phase that's already been permitted, and that will be the next thing people see, is the space between Newport Creamery and the Bank of America. We took down the 8,000 square foot building on Hillside Road there. We're putting up a new two buildings comprised of 30,000 square feet. Garden City was proud to announce last week that Legal Sea Bar, connected with Legal Seafoods, will be one of the anchor tenants in that new building, but there will be some other restaurants coming forward and some other retail uses. That didn't happen overnight. We had to go through the Planning Commission, the Development Plan Review Committee, because that project was large enough to do that. And so anything going forward that we've been talking about will have to be reviewed. I thank you, Mr. President. We're staying here. I will try and keep track of questions or comments. If you choose, if the council chooses for us to try and respond, we'll be happy to do that. I do want to thank the public for their patience tonight and the council for allowing us to at least try and put on an abbreviated presentation like we did at the Ordinance Committee. Thank you.
Steve Carrera, 5 Priscilla Drive. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening. Good evening, Council President, members of the council. My name is Steve Carrera, 5 Priscilla Drive, sitting member of the Zoning Board of Review, and I address the council this evening out of a concern for a proposed ordinance, let's see, 17.24.030, licensed cultivators. As I read the ordinance, it seemed that there were many provisions for what could possibly be a substance that we could see outside the building, makes provisions for blacked out windows, secured shipping areas and the like, security, lighting and the like. And there were a couple of issues with respect to odor control, okay? And, you know, I can imagine what the cultivators will be cultivating there. It doesn't state it anywhere in the ordinance. However, my concern is basically twofold. The first concern that I have is that any adverse effects from this cultivation facility, it clearly states that the adverse effects can't permeate beyond the walls of the building that it's in. But it makes no provision for if this facility is in an industrial, condominium development, or rented space in an old mill. Makes none whatsoever. So are those other tenants in that building have the same protections as those people that are outside the building? Okay, there was one other issue. The other issue was, I'm drawing on my experience as an individual that's been in the food business, and I've handled food from tailgate to table for 35 years. My concern is that if these concerns with regard to odor are injected in an area where there's a food service operation in the same building, what adverse effect would it have there? I was just curious if the State Department of Health Food Safety Regulation was contacted regarding this ordinance, and then, if need be, that the ordinance be amended such as to give protections to those people that want to open a food handling business, wholesale and the like. And those are the extent of my comments. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Carrera. Paul Valletta. Good evening, Deputy Chief.
Good evening, Mr. President, honorable council members. Paul Valletta with the President of Cranston Firefighters. We're in favor of the resolution before you tonight on police fire residency. We came before you a few months ago. We had a couple of diversity meetings, and I think we were all in agreement that we'd like to be a little more diverse on the Cranston Fire Department. We told you what the problems were. It's because our numbers of people applying for the job are in the hundreds. They're down in the hundreds, which impacts how many minorities and women sign up. So I'm not sure if all the reasons we brought forward to you are what's causing the numbers to dwindle down. I'm not sure we'll ever know what why the numbers are dwindling. This might be a step in the right direction, that we open it up to people that are out of state that want to come in and be Cranston firefighters. And that's strictly why this is in, and that's strictly why we're in favor of it. It's going to open the pool. We're the only fire department in the state of Rhode Island that you have to live in the state of Rhode Island to be a firefighter. Everybody else has no residency requirement. So that's why we're in favor of it, what we were talking about a couple of months ago, the diversity issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Robert Santagata.
Good evening. Robert Santagata, President, Cranston Police, IBPO Local 301. Also, just to mirror what Paul Valletta said, we're also in favor of this bill. This job is hard enough trying to get people to recruit to it nowadays, what goes on in the world. We just feel that we need to open up the application pool to outside of the state. And as far as police departments in the state, we are also the only police department in the state that requires a residency to the state. It's kind of, asinine that you can live in Block Island and work here, but you can't live in Seekonk. So I know over the years, the training lieutenant is also here, that there's been documented cases where minority recruits have turned the job down because they do live Seekonk, Attleboro, North Attleboro, and they, 22 years old, living at home, they don't want to leave mom and dad yet, they're not ready to come live in Rhode Island. To say that they won't eventually move here, I'm sure that's always a possibility. It is a great city, as we all know. So that's about it. We are in favor of it. We hope that you support the resolution tonight, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santagata. Stephanie Powell. Good evening, Mrs. Powell.
Good evening. Good evening, all. I've got a few words to say about the shopping center plans or proposal, and I'm sorry I have to almost read it because I'm not a public speaker. But Garden City Management said it themselves in their brochure, that it's all about the draw. And one quote from that brochure is, Garden City is not only the most popular center in Rhode Island, it's drawing visitors from Massachusetts and Connecticut as well. It's not just a shopping trip, it's an experience that keeps people coming back time and again. And the reason that people do this is precisely because of what the center is now, the best open-air shopping area in Rhode Island. And it's the ambience, not just for shoppers from the 3 states, but for the reason people move into the Garden City neighborhood, like myself. The shopping area was built as part of a planned community, you know all that, the first in the state. Plans for 100-foot buildings and changed the entire atmosphere. And I know you're saying you don't really have any plans for 100 feet, but frankly, for those of us living in the hollow below the shopping center, the current 35 feet can seem high. A couple of things about the environment, and then I want to get back to the plans. The runoff is still a big problem in the area, not just from Garden City, but from the area south of Sakanasa Crossroad. And the more paved over the general area becomes, the worse the runoff program would be. I'm sure other people will speak to the traffic situation. It's bad now, it can only get worse. That's the issue that I hear about the most, and that is not necessarily a Garden City plan problem. I certainly understand the developers need to stay competitive in an ever-changing market. Perhaps they need to be free to consider apartments and offices and even a hotel in their planning. But the Garden City development area, which abuts residences, is very different from the commercial areas on the south side of Sakanasa Crossroad, which do not abut residences, and it should not be treated the same way. I personally would not object to a height limit of, say, 50 feet, which would allow for 3-story buildings within the center. And if a hotel requires 5 or 6 stories, there's no reason the developer cannot apply for a variance at that point. But that and other tweaks, such as what the developers might want to do with the parking area behind the post office, which would impact residential neighbors below the hollow, should be decided by the zoning folk on a case-by-case basis. And it wasn't until this past week I heard about possible 3 stories. You're right, it doesn't look very nice now, but that would totally take away sunshine and light from the people below in the hollow all along Poplar Drive. And I'm not even sure you would have the setbacks you need. But anyway, that's no way should the city give the developers the freedom to do whatever they want in the future. We vote for one thing, who knows if they will, 10 years from now, even if they don't do anything now, if they have all that they want and they sell the center, who knows what another owner would want to do if they already have these okays. I just want to say we vote for and we look to the council to represent the interests of the residents as well as the businesses. And if you allow this ordinance to stand as it is, you really are advocating your responsibility. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Lieutenant Mark Freeborn. Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening. Mark Freeborn, 171 Glen Hills Drive. I come here to voice what Robert Santagata also said in regards to support the resolution for the residency or waiving the residency requirement for police and fire. I've been a member of the police department for the past 22 years. The last 8 years of that, I held the position of recruitment and training. My emphasis is here to express to you how we are losing candidates due to the fact that candidates do not want to move from their established residencies outside the state. An example of this was our 2013 recruitment drive, a recruitment effort. We had a long, painstaking recruitment, which we had over 500 applicants apply for the police department. Through the testing process, we whittled that down to a list of 70 applicants to fill future vacancies for the police department. When it came down to it, our #1 overall candidate, who was lucky enough to also be a police officer in the state of Connecticut, went through the process. We conducted background investigations on him, which included going through his internal affairs file at the current police department that he had. When it came down to being offered the position, he denied the position because he did not want to uproot his family and come to the state of Rhode Island. Now, this candidate would have been a prime example of how the city would have been able to save money, because we would have had to not allow him or not permit him to go to the academy due to the fact that he was already a police officer. Those are opportunities that I feel the city may have lost in regards to getting a financial gain and getting an officer that is already has the experience and to come into, again, a fine police department. Also, lastly, the pool of police applicants in this day and age, with law enforcement being under scrutiny the way that it is becoming more and more dwindled down. More and more departments are looking at the same pool of applicants. We are losing applicants to the cities of Pawtucket, the towns of East Providence, Seekonk, other agencies, Woonsocket, for the simple and fact of the matter is that they are close to the state border, and they do not have an ordinance requiring them to live within the state of Rhode Island. Again, I echo what Bobby Santagata said in the fact that it seems somewhat foolish in this day and age in 2017 to have someone that's able to reside in Watch Hill Westerly, which is 45 miles from the headquarters building, and would probably take him 40 minutes to get to work. However, someone that lives 7 miles away in Seekonk and would probably take him about 8 minutes without traffic to get to headquarters, and that candidate is not eligible to be hired as a police officer. So I just want to echo, like I said, what Robert Santagata said in regards to the residency resolution. I think it's time now to also look at waiving that and having the opportunity to broaden our base and pool applicants that may only reside a short distance over state lines. Thank you.
Good evening, council members and Mr. President. This evening will be the turning point, literally, for the Garden City Center as we know it, as well as its neighboring communities. Most residents refer to the center as a gem or a jewel in the midst of our neighborhood. We all believe that the center has been a good neighbor these past years and has served us well. The center has evolved into a desirable shopping and eating destination for many people throughout Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. This has been a boon to our tax base. But the potential expansion under Ordinance Number 1-17-10, if finalized by the Council, will ultimately alter the dynamics of this destination and greatly impact the quality of life for the neighboring residents. Of utmost concern is lot number 693, the rectangular parking area on Midway Road. The abutters of this property are those that reside on Poplar Drive and in the area known as the Hollows. Lot number 693 is at a much higher elevation than those residential lots, and if developed with a multi-level structure, along with the removal of trees abutting their property, would ultimately have a negative effect on property values in that area. This potential development would include noise pollution, dust and dirt, as well as night glare from security lighting. As one of the abutters stated, imagine not being able to open your windows for 2 years. Another element of this ordinance is the potential for the change in building height, which may be allowed in the center. LA Fitness received a variance to change its building height from 35 feet to just under 40 feet. To avoid the need for such variances, the ordinance proposes a maximum height of 100 feet. Although the building of such a structure may never occur, and I do remain skeptical about that fact, the opportunity would exist for this type of structure at some point in the future. Unfortunately, the ordinance is open-ended and vague as to what type of expansion could or would take place. I feel this ordinance gives the owners of the center free rein to erect whatever structure they deem necessary to stay relevant in the retail arena. Could I build a 5-story structure in my backyard? Could I have a horse lazily grazing on my front lawn? No and no. As a good citizen, I abide by those laws as they pertain to my residential property. To turn the center into a mixed-use venture with the possibility of lodging, a parking garage, and residential units would drastically change the ambience and ultimately add to our traffic concerns. Along with this proposed expansion, our city officials, planners, and developers must discuss and create a viable solution to our already unacceptable high levels of traffic congestion in the area of Chapel View as well as the center. We all know that the current traffic patterns do not support the amount of vehicular traffic on Sockanosset Crossroad and Pontiac Avenue. Many residents have expressed concern about the increase in traffic in their neighborhoods, particularly Cypress Drive, Plantation Drive, and Garden City Drive. In my opinion, the owners of both Chapel View and Garden City Center, as well as the city of Cranston, have literally ignored this colossal problem. You will hear a combination of voices this evening, whether in favor of or opposition to this amendment. Ultimately, the most significant voices we hear will be yours. When you consider your decision tonight, please keep in mind that you sit before us because your constituents chose you. We did so because we believed you would do everything in your power to protect and support the residents living in your appointed wards. Prove to us that our votes were not in vain. I respectfully request that you abstain from casting your vote this evening and table this amendment until you have engaged in further in-depth deliberation and consider what the actual impact will be to the abutters on Poplar Drive and to the residents in the surrounding communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there are a lot of people here to speak tonight, so I'm going to bang the gavel 3 times very lightly when you hit 4 minutes. If you hear that, I'm going to allow you to finish your comments, and that way we can just keep moving along. When you hear the gavel bang 3 times lightly, that means you've hit 4. Finish up your statements and kind of wrap it down for us. Robert Santori. Name and address for the record, Mr. Santori.
What was that, sorry?
Name and address.
Robert Santori Jr., 30 Egan Road, right off Park Ave. Good evening, Council President Farina and fellow councilmen. I'm speaking, I've been here about an hour and a half now, so I'm going to be hit a lot of points here, especially what I heard earlier. First off, I think the big reason, I heard dialogue with the community, I think the big reason why everyone is behind me tonight is because they didn't really feel like there was a dialogue in this process. I feel like a lot of them felt like this is the first time they heard about it was in the Providence Journal article last week. And we can sit here and say, well, we're not going to use a 100-foot building today or tomorrow. The problem is that it's there and that they can at one point use it. And I think that is a legitimate concern about property values, about, if we're going to be expanding Garden City, what it's going to do if the state doesn't give us enough money for the roads in terms of our taxes. And I think it's just overall also congestion. I think you hear it from the local residents, but I think overall, we call Garden City the crown jewel. And I remember, I've been a Cranston resident for 26 years, all my life, haven't lived anywhere else. And I want to keep living here. I bought a house last year because I want to keep living here. But the problem I see is that we already have a lot of issues with congestion over in Garden City. And mind you, I think it's important to point out this is 2 stages from now they're planning. Because we already have another stage they mentioned that's coming. We don't know what kind of traffic's going to be after that. And now we have another stage after that. And I understand it's going to be, construction and parking, it's going to be a while. But I think that when I hear, well, what are you going to do about all the cars around there? And I hear the solutions being Ubers and Zip cars, I just sit here and kind of doubt that. I don't think even Uber might be around in 10 years when it comes to Garden City. I think Garden City will outlast Uber. I think that when we sit here and we hear, well, the council passed stuff previously on less information, so you should pass. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that's an insult to you, an insult to everyone in this room. I think that, I don't think anyone here is worried whether that's going to pass fire code. I think the problem is they're going to worry about a 100-foot skyscraper. I think they're worried about 2 hotel rooms. You talk about we want to be better than Providence Place Mall, and that's fine, but there's no residential buildings right next to Providence Place Mall. Especially when you can take into the fact that if there were, what do you think the property values would be around there, right? If you had to be right across from Providence Place Mall. I think that I love Garden City. I love going there. I go to Chipotle a lot of nights. I probably should go to LA Fitness more often, but I don't. But I just think that there's a lot of issues that really weren't brought to the people's attention. I know I hear dialogue, and I don't think they have any ill will towards us. Garden City is great right now. But I think what I do see is a lack of dialogue with the community. I think that did anyone from Garden City, because this is going to be, whether you agree with this or not, I think a major transformation from Garden City. I think we can all agree with that. And I think the issue is, did anyone go into neighborhoods to talk to the residents? I doubt that. Did anyone from the council talk to their people who are in those neighborhoods about this, especially when they run for re-election last year? I doubt that. So I sit here and I'm concerned because it would have been nice to know this information when I was buying a house last year, that all of a sudden we're going to have a 100-foot building or drive-thrus or something else over in Garden City. I'm not anti-business. I'm not against growth. I remember Garden City back when Borders shut down and you could still see the imprint of the Circuit City sign. I think we all remember that. We don't want to go back to that. I think another issue is what we're going to do about local businesses in Garden City Center for the next 10 years. Because, what about ties to the community? Because we keep talking here like there's not going to be another recession in the next 10 years. And we've been very lucky since 2008, but how much is our luck going to grow out? So I sit here concerned as someone who used to see Garden City empty and wonder what it's going to be like when we have 2 giant empty lots. And then the city has to give more tax subsidies to businesses to come in because now we have 2 giant empty lots with nothing to do. I think I have, 30 seconds left there about? Okay. So just to wrap it up, I love this city. I love living here. I've been here 26 years. I want to be another 26, if not longer. But I think that it's up to you as council and to listen to these people and give this more time. We talk about a framework. The framework is the most important part of any foundation of a building. And if we sit here and then one other point. I'm just curious about one thing. What did they not get? Because I keep hearing this is not a blank check. What did I not get, a 101st-foot building? Because I'm very curious what they were denied or what they didn't ask for if this is not a blank check. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time, and I hope everyone else, I hope you listen to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. Frank Justin. Evening, Frank. Name and address to the record.
Frank Justin. I live at 14 Sefton Drive, Cranston. The issue I bring to the council this evening is one that I know has come to the attention of the council. Several city officials have told me that this issue has come to their attention frequently. I'm specifically referring to the long-term paving problem at Narragansett Boulevard. The city's own road survey has shown for years that this road is very much in decline on a scale of 0 to 100, I think is what they use. Ken Mason shared with me the results of the most recent survey, and it was some sections of it are in the 30s to 40 range, which is pretty poor. I understand the city has more roads than funds to fix the roads. But in my little fact-finding mission before coming here tonight, the mayor's office told me that they have a budget of about $360,000 to repair Narragansett Boulevard from Norwood Avenue up to Ocean Avenue. And that's about $360,000. It might surprise you that if I were sitting where you're sitting, I wouldn't be spending that $360,000. What I would suggest, however, my approach to it is, that's about 0.8 of a mile, by the way. My approach to you this evening and for the city to consider is to repair the section of about 0.2 of a mile, which is roughly from Bluff Street down to Sefton, thereabouts, which is only 0.2 of a mile. On a pro rata basis, that would be less than $100,000. And the big bonus, extra bonus here is that I understand the city has budgeted and is planning for this coming spring to do some drainage repairs right adjacent to that area, right along Sefton Boulevard, running south, I believe. So it would be, you know, a win-win if we could sort of bring those two projects together. I think it would be a very affordable and efficient way to do the most good for with the least amount of money. In closing, I'll just relate to you a true story. One day I was driving my car down Narragansett Boulevard, and suddenly the front end was shaking and rattling, and I thought I had a flat tire. So I got out, pulled the car over to the side, I got out and walked around the car, and unfortunately it wasn't a flat tire. It was the road that had so jarred the car, it made me think I had a flat tire. I remember that day very well. Specifically, it was September 17th. I had just returned from my attorney's office when I signed the closing papers to my home on Sefton. It was September 17th, 1997. So 20 years ago. The road hasn't gotten any better. I think we could use a little bit of help from the city. So I hope the city will find it in their hearts and in their budget to make those improvements in this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Justin. Barbara Rubine. Good evening, Barbara.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record, please.
Barbara Rubine, 1438 Narragansett Boulevard in Cranston. And I, too, am here to make a couple of comments about the plan to use some of the bond funds that were approved for repaving roads in the city of Cranston. I'd like to say that I have been a resident on Narragansett Boulevard for more than 37 years. And as Frank pointed out, it has received very little attention over that 37 years. The road is a main thoroughfare in the city. It is in very bad shape, and it is also a road that has received a lot of attention because of the number of accidents from speeding cars going down the boulevard and hitting houses or ending up in the Providence River. I would like to concur with Frank that the road is unsafe. It is so deteriorated that the center of the road is like driving on a chatter strip. And cars that travel that road end up driving in the parking lane or in the bike path. in order to avoid the corrugated surface. It is not safe for bike riders or for pedestrians or for drivers. It has also been said to me that because of the speeding problem, that it would, if the road were to be repaved, it would become more attractive for speeders. I take issue with that comment because if the cars are speeding now in its deteriorated state, it really can't get any worse. And I think as a resident of the city, that the residents deserve better, that the road is very loud from service vehicles, garbage trucks, plows, lawn care providers. And I think that it would be in the city's best interest to make these improvements for the safety of the residents and for the potential attractive nature of Edgewood as the area at the other end of Allen's Avenue gets developed, the jewelry district, that Edgewood has a lot of historic homes. Narragansett Boulevard is on the National Register. That sort of connecting piece was just accomplished in November, December of 2016. And I think as all of the comments that I'm hearing tonight about Garden City being the jewel of the city, I think that the city can add to its list of jewels and enhance the neighborhoods. And this would be an important way of doing that with safety considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Bill Katz. Name and address for the record, Mr. Katz.
Hi, Bill Katz, 106 Poplar Drive. Mr. President, council members, I'm here as a concerned citizen about the ordinance for the rezoning of Garden City. I want to start off by making a point that we all can agree the Wilder Company has done a wonderful job. Garden City, the shopping center, is at a peak right now. It's a joy to go with. Wonderful restaurants, great shopping, but we have to think what they have been saying tonight. They made a point of saying many times that they have no plans. That, yes, someday maybe a hotel, someday maybe assisted living, maybe more homes. Last week they made a point, they said maybe a yacht club. Now for those of us who know how close we are to the water, we still wonder about that point. But here's the point that I feel you as the council have to understand. Why do we want to give them carte blanche at this point to go and solicit a 100-story hotel? Why do we have to give them carte blanche to plan for a drive-through at the end? Why do we have to give any of those when, yes, there's a long process afterwards for everything that is part of it, but they do not need to have carte blanche to proceed. They can take, listen, they built LA Fitness, they had to get an exemption, that was fine, whether we liked it or not, they got the exemption. When they want to build more, they can do it. They can come up in front of you, in front of the zoning commission and present their ideas. What they're doing now is they're looking for carte blanche, which means they're looking, once they have this zoning law done, they can go out to this hotel chain and say, listen, we already have part one done. We know we can build you your 7-story hotel, or at least start the process. We want to get you on board. Why should we give that to a private company when they can go through every single step lawfully with you, with the zoning board, in a timely fashion? I live in the Hollows. It's a wonderful area. Those of us who live in Garden City, we appreciated families, single home dwellings. It's a place where people are raising families. It's a place where we have a wonderful, wonderful amount of people who have been there their entire lives. What they are doing right now can change the shape of not just the shopping center, but the residential area for all of us who live there. In the Hollows, I'm in Poplar Drive. Yes, right now, I know they could build something on that parking lot in Midway. I will, if they put a plan, I will be out here in front of you, in front of the zoning commission to fight it. Why? Because if there's something up in that hill, looking down at us, blocking out our sunlight, blocking our views, making us feel more closed in, taking away our property value, because let me tell you, people are not going to want to buy my house when I'm ready to leave in 20, 30, 40 years when they're looking at the back of a building. Maybe it's apartment buildings, maybe it's apartment, as they were talking before, maybe the first floor is going to be retail and apartment buildings above it. But who is going to want to buy my house for the money that I'll need at that point, at that point because of that view? So it will affect me financially in the future, it will affect me emotionally in the present, and it will affect us all. I'm not saying that they don't have a right for expansion. They do. They can plan it. But do not give them the reason to just do it and start the solicitation process. Make them go one step at a time. Do not give them this ability. Thank you.
Carolyn Medeiros.
Thank you. I wasn't intended, actually. I thought it was signing up for the safety things. But it's been very enlightening and interesting in hearing what the Cranston residents have to say. And I am a Cranston resident. I frequent Garden City. I have a P.O. box down there. I know what the traffic is like. It's insane, and it's dangerous. You know, this likens to the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz, promising what they're going to bring. And I got to say, listen to what these people are saying. Their property value is depreciating, the traffic increase, the quality of living that will decline. I'm listening to it. I'm a victim advocate. So, I'll make it short and sweet. Just hearing that part of it, I would proceed very carefully because you all represent, these are your constituents. And you represent them. Just like as a victim advocate, I represent victims throughout this state. So I try to be real careful in my decisions and listen to everybody and take it to heart. But this sounds like a bill of goods that's being sold, and it's really not a lot of information coming out that's countering what the concerns are. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Carolyn. Carol Fowler. Good evening, Carol. Name and address for the record, please.
Yep. My name's Carol Fowler. I live at 17 Balsam Court in Garden City. My parents moved to 17 Balsam Court in December of 1950. We've seen a lot of changes. I only have a little bit to add to what other people have said, but what I have to say has to do with the quality of life of the residents of Garden City, not the shoppers so much. Many people have referred to the shopping center as a jewel, but from where I sit at home, it's not so much of a jewel. I look out on LL Bean and LA Fitness, which is, I guess, okay. But between me and those stores, we have Midway Road, a little parking area that I was deeply dismayed to find out might have something built on it, a wire fence, and then a steep hillside down to my backyard. When I look out on the hillside, I see liquor bottles, beer cans, plastic bags, underwear, what I believe to be the footboard of a twin bed, which is now in my shed, waiting for me to remove it. The management company takes outstanding care of the part of the shopping center that people see when they're shopping, but not so much that we residents see when we look out our windows. And I don't think that's going to get a whole lot better if structures are built on that little strip of parking area behind my house. That's one thing. The other thing is, I'm not sure if these plans call for the further development of somewhat undeveloped land, but another problem we residents have in Garden City are wild animals appearing in our neighborhoods. There's an infestation, or whatever the word is, of wild turkeys in the Whitewood Drive area. Probably 15 or 20 of them now. In my area, we've had as many as 4 deer in our yard in the wintertime. They come because they're starving. I don't blame them or the turkeys. But we have developed this area to such an extent that there isn't any area for these animals to live in. And so any further development of open area is just going to make that harder for the turkeys, harder for the deer, and harder for us. Thank you.
Council President, point of information, just a point of information. I know that some of the people may be confused if they're here. They can speak on any of the docketed items, and they're kind of getting confused. And Ms. Medeiros was going to speak on something else.
Speak about safety and crime, because that's what she usually speaks on.
Yeah.
And she got up and talked about Garden City, so I thought she was good, but thank you for the support of the Garden City residents, Ms. Medeiros. If you'd like to get up and speak.
She might have a couple of minutes left, I guess, on the other
tell us
issue.
about your crime bills.
Great on 3 bills. You know these bills are going up to the State House. One is on clustering. Okay, Cranston has the highest number of sex offenders clustered in the state at Harrington Hall. Half your population in Harrington Hall are sex offenders, registered and level 1s. We went over all the rescue runs and the $55,000 cost in 4 months, the police runs, rerouting services for Harrington Hall. This is all under clustering. I gave the packets to Councilman Favecchio. They'll be going on to the State House for the bills. They look good to go. You need to, you need to consider depreciation of property values. That goes under clustering. It can go anywhere from 10 to 12 to 15% depreciation of property values of clusters of sex offenders. So let's just jump right on to the next one. So glad I included Garden City. Okay, mandatory registration bill. We did this already, passed the Senate unanimously. Mandatory 24-hour registration of sex offenders that are going into the shelter. Why did this happen? Because last year, Bruce Peavy, who raped 3 women, okay, and raped an inmate, put a correctional officer in the hospital, 4 B&Es and 3 larcenies. They waited about a week before they picked up the little phone, called the police and said, guess what, Bruce Peavy's living here. No. The state law is within 24 hours you're supposed to notify. The sex offender knows that, or they're in violation. There is no umbrella of safety because you're at Harrington Hall Shelter or Emmanuel House or anywhere else. So that little game's going to stop. Passed the Senate unanimously last year. A little laziness going on in the House, but I have 5 new reps on that, and I think there's going to be some pressure on our Speaker. Oh, by the way, he's saying that he's inclined to support the clustering bill. Okay, last one, because there was only 3, right, Councilman Favecchio?
Yes.
Oversight. Well, we've been watching the news, right? I can't even, the number of nonprofits, the latest one, the John Hope Center, and I heard a board member today wants Anastasia off the whole thing, and corruption there. Gallison, he was involved with a nonprofit. You know, you've been impacted in Cranston and Warwick with House of Hope last year when I told you they cost you $200,000 in fire and rescue runs, not including Cranston Police and State Police, okay, and a detective all year for $100,000. While she was crying poverty for money at Harrington Hall to refurbish it, did you know that she was picking up 15 properties in Warwick? Oh, and let's get even better. She didn't pay her back taxes. $199,000. So guess who picked up the tab on that, who the victims were? The taxpayers of Cranston picked up her back taxes. I had the form in the packet. It's there for you to see. You'll find it. Where it states the exact number that the city of Cranston, the taxpayers, picked up on her back taxes. That's just ridiculous, okay? It's bad enough we're paying for fire and rescue services. So oversight, it's an inspector general that we're looking at and his appointed elected officials, okay, underneath him. And we want oversight and transparency of these nonprofits. If we're giving them millions of dollars, okay, and it really is millions, okay, then 6.7 million from the state in Anchor Rising, 12.9 million from Reed to 25 housing authorities. This is ridiculous, the amount of money that we're talking about here. 6.7 million from the state, 450,000 from the Division of Planning. There's got to be oversight and transparency. They have to account for where their money's going. When I see clients all over the streets panhandling with frostbitten hands in 20-degree weathers and they threw them out the door, you know, I'm not as upset about the panhandlers. I'm upset about the multi-million-dollar nonprofits and their CEOs driving around in Mercedes and Beamers, and this is how they treat their clients. They throw them on the streets. That's cruel. In fact, I'll go so far as saying it's criminal. And the party's over. And many are looking at this oversight bill, because we've had enough. The taxpayers are picking up money that they don't even know about. Cranston taxpayers have been raped last year and this year. First under House of Hope, now under Crossroads, and I heard under the Urban League it was really ghoulish. Okay? This needs to stop. And we all need to be proactive to move this forward, and I'll push at the State House for you to get this done. But the party's over. The games are over. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. Michael, I'm not going to attempt to butcher your last name, but he lives at 96 Ocean Avenue.
The last name is Schlesinger, and I won't tell you how my Army sergeant pronounced my last name.
You know, now that you said it, it looks just like Schlesinger.
Sorry, I also didn't go to Catholic school, so that's why I can't write.
Thank you,
Okay,
Michael.
this is a tough act to follow, by the way. All right. Okay, I'm talking to you about Narragansett Boulevard. I live at the end of Narragansett Boulevard, where it intersects with Ocean Avenue, and I want to thank you very much for the rotary that you put in. It does work. In fact, there was a speeder who came down Narragansett Boulevard, hit the rotary, which is about 10 feet tall, and managed to land on top of it instead of hitting my house. So I was very thankful for that. But also, Narragansett Boulevard is an embarrassment. I mean, when you drive down Narragansett Boulevard, it's still a speedway. And when you get to the south end, right before the Cove, you will discover it's a washboard. And that's got to be changed. I mean, you know, it really is bum, 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 bum. It's like the car commercial. And also, we're trying to work, I happen to be the treasurer of the Edgewood Waterfront Preservation Association. And we're trying to work now on a stormwater situation. And it would be great if we could tie in the repaving of Narragansett Boulevard with the development of a stormwater plan. There is one presently that we're working on, but we need all the help. So if we could just pitch the road the correct way, it would solve a lot of problems. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlesinger. Scotty Dumel. Scotty Dumel? I was looking right at you, Mr. Dumel. I figured you'd... It's like, why is he staring at me?
woke me up.
Name and address for the record, sir.
Scott Duhamel, 155 Colonial Avenue. Good evening, Council President, Council members. I'm here in my capacity as the Secretary-Treasurer of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades, representing 16 different crafts and 10,000 men and women who make up the unionized construction industry in Rhode Island. We're here in cautious support of the rezoning ordinance at Garden City. I want to thank the council for including our letter in the records tonight. And I also want to thank the Wilder Management Company for giving us a good response too. My caution, my organization's caution is that we feel that over the past couple of years, many of the subcontractors that have been hired at that site have not really come up to area standards. And we'd like to, as this progresses, if this actual expansion occurs, we'd like to have the support of the council to craft some standard language, safety, training, wage requirements that would make that site a better place to work and increase the opportunities for Rhode Islanders to work there and even Cranston residents. In fact, ideally, and it's not that hard to do, there's even a way you can do local hiring goals on these projects where you can get a certain percentage that come right from this city and work a couple of blocks away from their house, which is a wonderful thing in the world of construction. So we'll be here watching the process as it goes on, and that's all I really have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Joyce Hashalian?
Yes, Pashalian.
Hashalian. Good evening, Joyce. Name and address for the record.
What?
Name and address for the record.
Yes, Joyce Pashalian, Bretton Woods Drive, and I'm here to talk about traffic. When I grew up, there was no Garden City. And then along came the bowling alley and Woolworths and a pharmacy. Right now, where I live has become a cut-through from Oaklawn Avenue to Garden City. People do not observe stop signs. There's speeding, trucks. It's not nice. I've been in touch with the mayor. I've written letters, and I have spoken to people, police, and so forth. Going forward with any of the plans that have been talked about tonight, I think will only make more traffic, more congestion. Just take a ride, just go down Reservoir Avenue. It's horrendous as you turn in to Chapel Hill. So I think it will only get worse. Also, personally, my car was totaled about 6 years ago, very serious accident on Sockanosset Crossroad. Someone came right out of Midway, boom. So I have my own experience. I like Garden City, but I hope things don't go in the direction that they might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Grace Carroll.
Cook. My name is
Cook.
Grace Cook.
Grace Cook.
Okay, so this is my experience speaking to the council. I am a foreigner, the first time. So let me just tell you, I was not aware of what's going on. I have never been involved in politics at all. My son sat this Sunday and said to me, Mom, do you know that they are changing the ordinance, they are changing Garden City? And I said, really? Yes, Mom. Why don't you go to the meeting? So I'm here. So some of the concerns that I have are the following. Just by the way, I live in Garden City. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law live in 34 Garden City Drive. I own another house in 37 Elm Drive, right? My concerns, I have raised 2 children. I have lived here for over 28 years. So Garden City is dear in my heart. Through the years, I have seen Garden City grow from something that's very modest center to something that is upscale. Through the years, you know, when I look at struggling, I sent everybody that could shop in Garden City. I gave presents so they could go, so they can help, right? And I think that is fine without thinking that helping, that garden, that gathering all these people was going to cause what we have now. In the sense is, okay, so we are wealthy, we're doing great, let's have more, right? So my concern is being the crowdedness, putting a building that is going to be 100 feet high, that is going to change the properties, okay? A flashy building, flashy, sign that is going to make the property look cheap, right? So will you kindly please consider it, right? You are changing the way our neighborhood is, right? Like this gentleman said, that's fine. We need to make money. We need to move on. That's fine, right? Work with what you have. Wherever you need something else, come and ask for help that you need to do it. But don't keep giving, saying, oh yeah, you can do this, you can do that. God knows what we're going to end up with at the end in 10, 15 years. Besides, it's changing the way our families, God willing, I want to die in Garden City. I don't want to move. This is my home. So will you kindly please, when you vote, this is there to us. Please, act responsibly. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. At this point, I have concluded the sign-up sheet. I'm going to ask some people who are outside if they'd like to speak. I know there's some more people inside that would like to speak, but you get to see us live. People outside, sadly, have to listen to us on radio. So we're going to allow some of the people to come in for a couple minutes. So if anyone outside would like to come in, now would be the time to come in, and let's... Yeah, we have more seats so we can fill them in.
Councilman, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Brenda Mayette. I live at 11 Bryant Road in Cranston. I've spent just about my whole life in Cranston. I love Garden City. I love everything about it. And I think sometimes the thought is lost that that is also a neighborhood. It is not just a shopping center. And if you go down Route 2, go as far as Rhode Island Mall, which originally was Midland Mall, it's a ghost town. It's a big barren parking lot with 2 stores, one on either end, and I believe one of them is going to close, which is Sears. There is also only something in the middle of the Midland Mall, Rhode Island Mall. Sometimes you just overdevelop something. And if you go down there and see that ghost town, and if you overdevelop the Garden City shopping area, and turn it into something that finally nobody wants to be there, nobody wants to shop there, and nobody even wants to live there. You'll lose all the tax dollars that are coming into your city for the residents. And I think because Garden City is a residential area, in addition to a lovely shopping area, it has to be treated a little differently than just a place where you build businesses. I was part of when Chapel View was going to be built. I went to all of the meetings, and we were assured, left and right, up and down, they would keep the giant trees that were so beautiful on that property, and that they would try to keep some of the buildings. To my knowledge, I believe one building was kept in the chapel itself, and everything else, one morning, all of the trees disappeared before anybody had any chance to say anything about them. And the answer was, oops, it was a mistake. But once the trees were gone. So that's what makes that less beautiful than what Garden City is, because there are no trees in Chapel View. It's just a big, great big parking lot with a market and big businesses. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Name and address for the record.
Thank you. I didn't see the sign-up sheet.
It's all right.
Thanks. Greetings. My name is Lynn Harrington. I live at Taft Street in Cranston. I also serve on the Plan Commission and the West Bay Land Trust, but right now I'm here speaking for my fellow farmers in Western Cranston. I do have a small packet of information that I'd like to distribute. Is that okay?
Yes,
Can
we'll
I give that?
have the clerk come take it from you, or the deputy clerk.
Thank you. Thank you. I am here tonight to speak out in support of the licensed cultivator ordinance that you and the mayor have developed. I'm just so happy that you've been so proactive in developing this ordinance, and I would like to make a comment to add one more little thing to it to, I hope, make it perfect. Let me give you a little bit of history on this. I'm not sure that people know what this is, especially after hearing an earlier commenter. My comments reference the new procedures that come out from the, let me read this directly. The new law seeks to provide a consistent and reliable source of medical marijuana to the state's licensed compassion centers only. No longer will caregivers be able to sell their excess product to compassion centers. Only newly licensed cultivators will be able to do so. This is an important distinction to make. Folks have made comments about, oh, it's going to be a retail operation, oh, there's going to be stuff that goes back door, and this new law has done everything to make sure that doesn't happen. Let me go through some of this with you. As you already know, the DBR regulations were finalized last month and seek to direct the flow of medical marijuana to compassion centers licensed by the Department of Business Regulation instead of to the community at large. The Department of Business Regulation has also issued new medical marijuana growing guidelines and testing requirements to ensure reliable and healthy product. This new classification, and it is brand new, also seeks to address leakage in the current system, exactly the situation that's been going on. The new paradigm requires that licensed cultivators apply for an annual license and comply with some 80 pages of security, monitoring, and reporting requirements. All licensed cultivators, whether they grow in warehouses, factories, greenhouses, or plant nurseries, must be in secure, locked, and videotaped facilities. They must be made available to the state police and Department of Health and Department of Business Reg and any other legal entities that need to check out the operation. All facilities are monitored and they have to be inspected annually. Every plant grown by a licensed cultivator, whether it's grown in a warehouse, factory building, or secure greenhouse or nursery, must be tagged. All tagged plants grown by licensed cultivators can only be sold to licensed compassion centers. This is not a recreational use. This is not a retail use for anyone other than those folks who have medical cards. All tags grown by licensed cultivators will be tagged and they will be taxed. Every single plant must be tagged and taxed. Licensed cultivators may not participate in cooperative care growing arrangements. This is the only thing they can do, and this is the only outlet they can sell to. They cannot grow as caregivers to a medical marijuana client, and again, they must be licensed and sell only through the compassion centers. All licensed cultivators must be located outside the boundaries of educational, residential, and recreational areas as you currently have defined in your draft ordinance. The new regulations specifically allow medical marijuana to be grown in warehouses, factories, and secure greenhouses and plant nurseries. That's according to Rhode Island general law and the business regulations. The only exclusions that your draft ordinance has right now is to not allow farmers to grow this product in their secure greenhouses in their farm areas, which kind of defies logic, since you would think that farmers would be the ones that would grow green plants. It is with this legal backing and the goal of providing additional and sustainable sources of income to our community, especially farmers, that the revised draft ordinance be revised to allow farmers to grow in secure greenhouses and nurseries. These agricultural areas are allowed by law, and Cranston can define these particular grow areas through land use codes 7300, 730C, and there are a couple more. I won't belabor the point. To summarize, the current draft ordinance that you have shuts down the opportunity for our farmers to grow and who make significant agricultural investments every single year in their properties. To allow legal medical marijuana operations to operate only in warehouses and factories is to cut out the very people with the expertise and need for additional income, our city's farmers. Please consider the revised draft I have presented to you. It behooves us to continue to support and keep our local farmers in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come up. Name and address to the record, please.
My name is Dave Siner. I've lived in Garden City, 21 Crocus Drive. We've had 3 houses in Garden City. We love Garden City. We think it's a great place. What I'm going to talk about is kind of more the financial aspect of it. Right now, the economy is great. Garden City is just about virtually rented. Interest rates are relatively low. They're going to go higher. What better time for an investment group to potentially end up selling Garden City? With the zoning, with this overlap zoning, it's going to even make it more attractive. I think the Wilder people have done a terrific job, but there's no guarantee that the Wilder people are going to be the managers of a potential new owner. We've seen at least 4 owners, owners of Garden City in the last 40 years. There's no guarantee the current owners are going to be here, and there's no guarantee that the Wilders would be the management team for those new owners. As far as the overlap zoning, you have one of the best attorneys representing Wilders as far as getting zoning through. So I don't know why you would need the overlap when you have someone like Attorney Murray who probably could get the zoning. So there's no guarantee that if you pass this new zoning regulation that these people are going to be involved in it. It could be someone completely different. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Milton Appleby. I live at 124 Tallman Avenue. Talking about Garden City, I actually just moved to Rhode Island, Cranston particularly, in April from Los Angeles. So all these issues that we're talking about right now about development are actually something that I've dealt with back home and have seen what mass development looks like and how detrimental it could be to a community. Living in Hollywood proper, there was a lot of development, a lot of promise of, new hotels, new businesses coming in. But what happens is there's a lot of vacancy also that can arise from that. We're not guaranteed the economic growth as per, the way things are right now. I actually have a background in retail. And looking at Garden City, and it's a great shopping center. I mean, there are some shopping centers, around Warwick Mall, Providence City. I think Garden City is the best one. But that being said, there are possible issues with retail there. I know Gap, Banana Republic, J. Crew, some other companies are actually facing huge financial issues, and those smaller specialty stores that usually are safe from store closures are actually on the verge of closing stores as well. So aside from growing and becoming a bigger space, we need to think about what we're gonna do in the interim if these stores were to currently vacate Garden City. So we need to be innovative about what you're gonna do with the shopping center. It's understandable that you wanna do something with a hotel or parking structure or live work environment. That's something that was big in LA as well. But it also was detrimental to the community in the sense that, when I moved here, we looked at demographics. It's a suburban area. It really doesn't, it's not conducive of a live, work, play kind of shopping center. It's very, families that live in the neighborhood, or the apartment doesn't really make sense in that situation. So what I'm trying to say essentially as an outsider, as a new resident to the city, it is a great shopping center, but I think it's great as is, and you really need to think of what to do within the scope of now and be innovative that way versus just saying, oh, we want to add a hotel, we want to add apartment buildings, we want to add a drive-through restaurant. People have talked about traffic ad nauseum. It is an issue. Coming from LA, the traffic capital of the world, looking at Saconaset, it is a reminder of some of the streets in LA, which, I thought I got away from. But you really have to take the community as a whole and listen to what we want, what they want, and be considerate. We can't just say, okay, this is gonna be a great plan, but at the same time, it will be detrimental to the future of Cranston and to the future of the residents of Garden City and the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Hi, Matt Lenz, 61 Sheffield Road. I want to speak about both the zoning ordinances. First, I'll start with the cultivation ordinance. Strongly opposed to that ordinance for a few different reasons. First and foremost, I just don't agree with having a marijuana grow facility in the city of Cranston, which is something I'm personally against. But also, it doesn't eliminate the problem that we already have in the medical marijuana program, and that's the diversion of the home-grown marijuana onto our streets. Right now, that's a huge problem across our entire state. There's a lot of marijuana that is being sold in excess of the grow because you can grow more than you're allowed to actually keep on you. And that ends up in our streets. Before it was going to the compassion center, some of it. Now, when those people with those home grows have that marijuana, the only place that they can sell it is illegally on the street in the black market. So for those reasons, I think the cultivation process, the law itself and the regulations set forth by DBR have just kind of masqueraded that whole home grow problem we already have. The second ordinance I want to talk about is obviously the Garden City ordinance. I'm a relatively new resident. I've been here for a year, starting tomorrow. Me and my wife bought a house a year ago. And one of the reasons, well, 3 reasons why we bought a house in Cranston. The elementary school where we live near is great, off of Budlong. We really love the accessibility of the highway. It's easy to get to work. But the third reason is just the wonderful things that have happened at Garden City in Chapel View. We love that area. We love the shopping center. We thought the mixed-use development at Chapel View was really nice. You have the condos over there. People live there. And we think the same thing would probably be great for Garden City, too. I'm somebody who wants to hold the line on taxes. Also like to see economic development, so I couldn't in good conscience say that I'm against this development because I think it helps kind of abate those issues of taxes and hold the line of taxes, and it brings jobs, whether it be construction or the mixed use, work and play. Mixed use has been kind of the way of the future across the entire country. That's kind of how these developments are working. I think the developers here want to stay nimble over the course of the next 10 years. I would imagine that these kind of development process would give them a way for them to come up with a sturdy 10-year plan, bring it back to you. I think there's plenty of procedures there to hold them in check, and I support that ordinance. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Tomlins.
Richard Tomlins, 400 Farmington Avenue, Cranston. I'm watching the clock there. It's getting close to my med times. And the warm glass of milk and off to bed. This is interesting. By the way, Mr. President, you're packing in here. The crowd that's here I haven't seen in a long, long time. I usually was a lone wolf except for Nick, the Citizen of the Year, Nick. On this issue, what we have to take a broad view. There's no question you're going to need more income. You're faced now with some elimination in the car tax. The Speaker is hell-bent on getting that through. That's going to cut into your revenue. You have 3 contracts or more that are already set in place. That's going to be increases each year for the next 1, 2, 3 years. You're currently negotiating with the police. Hopefully you'll show some paw with what you pay police, with what you pay the firemen. This lady here, if she's still here, spoke very eloquently about the situation in Cranston. We think we're pretty safe. But let me tell you, in the last year and a half, there's been 3 murders in my neighborhood. There's been house break-ins. The house that she mentioned has people coming all the time. And you have maybe, if my numbers are near correct, 100 men and women to patrol 321 streets in this city 24/7. We have to think about that. But this is a method, hopefully, that would raise money. I know there's some of the details that people are concerned about, but I'm convinced that nothing's going to be built unless everything goes through the city and perhaps the state, and maybe in some cases even the federal, to make sure it has all the requirements for environmental control and so forth. Before I was dismissed from the Contract and Purchasing Board, the Chapel Hill was talking to us about putting in new roads in that area. It was a great plan. It wasn't going to cost the city a dime. It was presented to the council also. I don't know whatever happened to it. It was pretty clear cut. It wasn't anything. They did have to get an okay from the state to pick up some land in that area. But that should be on the front burner if you're going to consider expansion in this area. What's happening? I was faced with that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Then it was decided the medium height hotels, office buildings could no longer pay for themselves. They realized the air above them is very valuable. And that's part of what you're faced here. That's one reason why they want to go higher, because that increases the density for whatever they put in that project, whether it's a hotel or anything else. And I'm sure they're doing their own studies. They're not stupid people. They're not going to put something in there that's not going to pay for themselves. So those studies will also, I'm sure, be presented to you. So you have a big job ahead of you. But the bottom line is, you all have that fiscal responsibility for this city. You got the budget coming up. You got the contracts already in place. You're going to lose, if not this year, very soon, you're going to lose some of your car tax. And you also have new contracts coming along. So that has to weigh heavily. And I think the citizens have to realize that Our taxes are pretty much maxed out in this city. If you see the studies, we're not only in the state, we're one of the highest in the country. That's one reason when outside firms make a determination of whether they're going to come to Rhode Island, they look at the school system, and overall it's in pretty bad shape, not counting Cranston, and they look at the taxes. So again, I think it comes down to a financial consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Good evening, Mr. Graziano.
Good evening, Council President, Council members. David Graziano, 191 Wentworth Avenue. As a resident of Edgewood, I was thinking I was going to be coming tonight to be talking about the roads, and I'm happy to at any other time, but really what I see as a primary issue tonight, and the one that you've had so many folks come up and talk to you about very specifically, is Garden City. As a young, with a wife and two young kids, we see it as a great opportunity to get out and get some fresh air, have an opportunity to hop into a store, potentially buy something, get warm, but also continue to get out in the middle of the winter. This past weekend was fantastic for us. What I can tell you is that this isn't an NIMBY issue for me, right? My windows aren't going to be blocked by a building being built. I'm not going to have significantly more problems with the traffic getting in or out. But what I do see is a general quality of life for the city of Cranston. We have only so much land, and more of that land is being chewed up. And let's not continue to overdevelop any specific area by offering a general overlay. This concept of an overlay really challenges me, because there is a permitting process. There's an opportunity where these individuals, and Mr. Wilder and the group that is fixed or improved Garden City, congratulations for the work that you've done. But we ask that you stick to the process. Don't offer this overlay opportunity that just makes it by right, as opposed to just go work the process, work the program, work the routine, work with Mr. LaPola and zoning, and make sure that we can get things done one by one, piece by piece, as opposed to offering it. If you do want to dream, gosh, I'm excited about the opportunity of you dreaming and finding something new that we can do there. But don't just do it with a list of 19 things that make me want to poke holes in it. Find the right thing that's going to get everybody behind you, and we'll be behind you if you pick the right thing out there. Please do your best, Council, to hold them to that. Challenge them to stick to the permitting process and don't offer an overlay opportunity. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak for or against any docketed items? Mr. Murray, did you want to say anything, or do you want to wait until we debate?
May I still, sir?
Oh, come on up, sorry. I was looking that way.
I'm a little in the back. Hi, my name is Carrie Petrella. I live at 236 Longacre Drive. I've been a resident of Cranston 43 years, my entire life. My grandmother lived in the house that I currently live in. I've been there for 15 years. I love Garden City. I love what Wilder has done. I am not opposed to development, continued development rather, but I do wish that, again, as everyone else here has said, we kind of slow down a little bit and just have some concern about runoff in the neighborhood below. Traffic is a major concern. Being on Longacre Drive, it's a straightaway from Pontiac out to Reservoir. People do 50 miles an hour on our street all the time. I'm very worried about that because it will continue to grow traffic-wise, as we know, Pontiac and Saconaset. So some of the same things that everyone's been saying, just I think that we need to slow down a little bit and pull back. And again, I'm not even opposed to residences. I think that they did a great job behind Garden City with the residences that are there. But again, I feel for the people at the Hollows, I know people who live back there. It's made a big difference. There's been problems with rainwater, flooding, noise, dust, all things that we're worried about. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, I'm actually going to take a 5-minute recess, let the stenographer have a few minutes to rest his hands, because we haven't started the business of the night yet, so I'm sure we're going to be here for a couple more hours doing that. So I'd like to give him a 5-minute rest. I'm going to make a 5-minute recess starting now. I would like to call the Cranston City Council meeting back to order. All right. I would like to call the Cranston City Council back to order. Thank you, everybody, for giving the stenographer some time. So at this point, I'm going to close public hearings, because we're good. And I've had a request from the school department, because the superintendent is not feeling well, that if we could suspend the rules to hear the 3 school contracts now, so we can get them out of here, because they're one of them's a little under the weather. So entertain a motion to suspend the rules to hear ordinances 11706, 11707, and 11708 now. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I will entertain a motion to approve 1-1706, ordinance ratifying school committee collective bargaining agreement, Cranston Teachers Alliance.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. I have a motion and a second. Under discussion, would the school department like to say any words about the ordinance? They're good. Any council members like to speak on the proposed ordinance? To the Finance Committee Chair, I believe this is unanimously voted out of committee. Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Thank you. There being no discussion, clerk, please take the roll on the ordinance.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Entertain a motion to approve 1-1707.
Motion to approve.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Entertain a motion on 1-1708.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. No discussion. There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for the indulgent counsel. School department, you guys are all set. Sorry you had to sit through the hearings, but we like when you can sit through our meetings instead of us having to sit through yours. All right, on to resolutions. I have a resolution in support of H5351, eliminating the state residency requirement for police and firefighters, sponsored by Council President Farina.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Under discussion, Councilman Arquette.
In favor of this resolution, also I'd like to be a co-sponsor, Council President.
You are more than welcome, Councilman Arquette. Any other discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what are we voting on?
The resolution in an order eliminating the state residency requirement that we just made a motion and a second on.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I have a resolution requesting the General Assembly enact State Bill 55 and House Bills 5159 and 5207, limiting the number of sex offenders at Harrington Hall to 10% of the population, and requiring timely notification of registered sex offenders moving into temporary housing or shelters by the management of said facilities. Sponsored by Council Vice President Vecchio and co-sponsored by Council President Farina, Councilman Palacios, Councilman Hopkins, and Councilman Colford.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a second. Under discussion, Council Vice President Vecchio.
Thank you, Council President. I know it's been a long night, but just to go over these, one of these is the same bill that was introduced last year, and Senator Lombardi was willing to do so for me and for Ms. Medeiros from the Alliance for Safe Communities. This would require, and I think she spoke awfully fast, but would require registration. It would require notification by the homeless shelter or temporary facility within an hour of that a registered sex offender moving in. And the reason for that is so that we can keep track of them at all times. There's also a 10% limitation bill that's been introduced by Representatives Lancia, Lima, Chippendale, Solomon, and Jackard. And all of these bills have received bipartisan support in the General Assembly. One of them is being heard tomorrow. And the other one that was mentioned by Ms. Medeiros was an oversight bill over the homeless shelter management companies. But I'm most concerned with the registration bill, which didn't get through the House last year, but I think it'll get through both chambers this year. And I think it would definitely tighten up the security, because you have these are people who have been convicted of very serious crimes against minors, and there's no supervision. They're let out at 7 a.m. in the morning, and they're free to go wherever they want. The police chief keeps tabs on this issue. We do spend a lot of money monitoring the situation. We heard from one of the homeless gentlemen that was kind enough to appear a week or so ago, and he even said that the homeless sex offenders tend to cluster together at Harrington Hall, and they don't really interact with the other people that are there. But that clustering is an issue that's a problem everywhere. So I think the state needs to take the bull by the horns this time. The Harrington Hall is right near all of our elementary schools and public library. I've been fighting on this for a number of years, and it looks like it has enough support in the General Assembly to at least get one or two of these bills passed. So I would we're just going to urge them to pass these bills, and I know they'll be heard in the House and the Senate very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Vecchio. Councilman Lanny.
I'd like to be, I agree with Councilman Favecchio 100%, exactly what he's saying. I agree with him, and I want to be a co-sponsor of this bill also. And I urge my fellow council people who haven't co-sponsored this to become party of this also. It's a very good bill.
Thank you, Councilman Lanny.
Councilman Stichels.
I'm a little bit confused about how many bills. I mean, I know there are 3 listed here.
Well, there's 2 of the same.
Yeah.
The registration bill has a House and Senate component. The other one, I only listed I believe the House bill because the Senate has yet to introduce its counterpart. The 10% restriction has not yet been introduced in the Senate yet, but I'm told that it will be. So basically, the registration bill and the 10% bill are the ones that I'm really centered on in these 3 that I mentioned. 2 are the same, basically, one House, one Senate. Okay. The other is just House.
Well, I think you've explained pretty well the notification one in the past. Yes. But the 10%, I'm a little worried about the 10% bill, because while it sounds good on the surface, I personally would rather have the sex offenders sleeping at Harrington Hall than under bridges and in cemeteries. And unless there's a piece of that says they're going to live, instead of the 10%, they're going to live in X place. I mean, they got to live somewhere. And at least at Harrington Hall, it's somewhat supervised. So that's what worries me about that. I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, if I may, Council President. Well, there are other shelters that they could go to, I believe. I don't know. Crossroads and House of Hope run a number of facilities. I would assume that there are others that they could go to. That one's a new bill that wasn't there last year. So I'm not so sure how it's going to do in the House. It may or may not pass. I don't know. I'm going to urge them to at least consider it. I don't know whether they will approve it or not. I think the registration bill, now that it's been heard twice, I think it has the legs to get passed, and that will certainly help us.
Well, I guess what I'd ask you to consider is that the 10% maybe be sent to committee, and we vote on the notification one here at the council meeting tonight. or...
Or separate them, or?
Yeah, to separate them. Because I mean, this 10% thing is the first time I have that concern. And
Yeah, I have no problem with separating. I don't know what the procedural issues would be to our council, maybe.
I believe
wake them up.
you'd have to withdraw them as written and re-advertise them. I don't think you can separate it on the docket to list 3 times. Clerk? Oh, we don't have a test. That's right. It's a resolution. So,
I believe we do have the right to, under Robert's rules, to divide a question as long as the 2 pieces of the question can stand on their own. And obviously, these are, excuse me, 2 bills, so I would request that we divide this.
thank you for your request. Under discussion, Councilman Pavlauskas?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Through the chair to the original sponsor.
We'll get there.
Council Vice President Vecchio. That number at 10%, does that come from a bill that's already up there? Does the bill at the House say 10%?
The House 5159, that Representative Lancia, Lima, Chippendale, Solomon, and Jackard introduced in January, mentions 10%, right in the language, line 14. So it does mention 10%, but it does have some exceptions for like hospitals, nursing homes, long-term care facilities, or psychiatric facilities. So if somebody needed emergency care, they would not be turned away. They wouldn't count the numbers. So I think that there is some restriction, but I have no problem. I almost put them in separately, so I have no problem dividing the resolutions into the one that deals with registration in both House and Senate. That could be voted on separately from the 10% bill, which is in the House only.
Well, I have no problem voting on them separately, just to follow up, but I really think that 10% is too high. I wish it was 0%, to be honest with you. So I would hope that if we send a resolution up there, it would match the bill that is going to be up at the State House. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And if the main sponsor has no issue with splitting them, to my parliamentarian, I believe it's fine. So we can split them and hear them separately?
That's fine. So we'll do the one with the registration bill first, I guess, because it's in both House and Senate. We'll do that, take that one first.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the first resolution.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the first and the second. Please note that Councilman Laney has asked to be a sponsor, so I will make him a sponsor on both. Chair, please take the roll. Clerk, please take the roll.
Is this on the 10%?
This is on the first one.
It's the registration.
Registrations.
Okay.
Yeah, that's S055, I think.
Thank you.
Through the chair,
Yes, Madam.
for clarification for purposes of the record, which bill, supporting which bills? Bill 55? Okay, thank you.
Registration bill. It does have a companion in the House now, which is 5207, I don't know if you need to, but it's fine if it just goes up on a Senate bill.
5207 is listed on the resolution.
We'll do all three separately, Vice President.
It's the same, the 5207 and let's see, 55, House 55?
Senate 55, 5207 House.
Okay, correct.
So we have a motion on Bill 55 and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the resolution regarding Bill 5207, the companion to Bill 55.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Under discussion, as a reminder, this is the companion piece of legislation to Bill 55, which is approved. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Now entertain a motion on the last one, which I believe is 5159.
That's
Motion
correct.
approved.
This is the one that limits to 10%. I have a motion to approve.
Second.
And I have a second. Under discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Already did it.
Yeah, the clerk is going to redraft these separately, just for the record, so everyone knows what's happening. The will of the council is to approve them separately. She will take all three together and redraft into three separate ordinances representing how we vote.
Resolution.
So, there being no discussion, clerk, please take the roll on 5159.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, now the ordinance committee, Councilman Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. We have in front of us ordinance 1-1709, ordinance and amendment of chapter 17.24, the Code of City of Cranston 2005, entitled Zoning Performance Standards Licensed Cultivators, sponsored by Mayor Fung. This did pass through the ordinance committee.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a motion to approve. I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Under discussion. Councilman Stichels. You guys are raising.
Yep. I'm, given Ms. Harrington's testimony here, I'm confused about this agricultural uses, which I feel like we were told exactly the opposite in the hearing. So what I would like to suggest is that this go back to the ordinance committee so that we can look at it more carefully and specifically look at the amendment that she is suggesting that we adopt, and that she also says that the Planning Commission recommended, so we could get a full airing of this. So I'll move that this be returned to the ordinance committee.
Looks like the administration is standing up to talk to you. But we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second on his motion?
I'll second it.
I have a second on the motion to move it back to committee. Director Coop.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may just add a little bit to this. Although I have not seen the document that was distributed by Ms. Harrington, I understand the gist of it would be to treat the activities of a licensed cultivator as agricultural as well as light industrial, as was the determination of our building inspector. It's my understanding in speaking with the city clerk as well as with the city solicitor that that change would have to be an amendment to the definitions included in the zoning code, could not be addressed through this ordinance. So my suggestion to the council would be to approve this ordinance as it stands, and if someone wanted to make an effort to amend the definitions in the zoning code, that would have to be done through a freestanding ordinance that would have to be properly advertised as a zoning change.
Thank you, Director Coop. Madam Clerk, do you concur with his assessment?
Yes, Mr. Coop had asked me with regard to this. Basically, it's amending another section of the zoning code, which would require another ordinance to be introduced and be re-advertised and come before the committee, or the council, rather.
Council Vice President Favecchio.
Thank you, Council President. In dealing with commercial real estate transactions, I just happen to have dealt with one today involving properties that are going to be used for this purpose. And I can tell you that in Warwick, it's going in industrial zones. They're not calling it, they're not going into agricultural or farmland because of this, a number of reasons. The security issues are tremendous. And the types of buildings that are allowed, and the tremendous amount money that has to be spent in equipping these complexes. And I also know that there's a move in North Kingstown to remove it from agricultural areas right down near Shotner Farm. So I think where the zoning is going is away from agricultural areas and not going to them. Not to say that in the future we couldn't do something to amend this or to amend the ordinance or to change the definitions, but I think you got to be careful when you move into an agricultural area because farms don't have security. You can't use a greenhouse and think that's a secure facility. In fact, I don't think they're allowed under the new state laws. So I understand where Councilman Stichels coming from, but maybe he could, introduce an ordinance down the road.
Councilman Lanning.
All right. I'm not an expert on marijuana growing, but I'm going to tell you one thing. I can read our business regulations, and it says, Department of Business Regulations requirement in 161 RICR-300-35-1. Licensed cultivators shall be allowed within agricultural areas, including greenhouses and nurseries, as defined by Farm Forest Land Use Codes and an M1 restricted industry and an M2 general industry. For some reason, at the ordinance committee meeting, I asked that question, and Mr. Coop gave me a completely different story, different answer, I should say. He said that it's only an M1 and M2 because you can't grow marijuana or cultivate marijuana in greenhouses or on farms. But according to the business regulations, you can. So we got two stories here, or two different versions of a regulation. And that's what's bothering me. And that's why I concur with Councilman Stichels in saying it should go back to committee and let's get a true definition of what we can do and what we can't do instead of coming up with saying zoning violations and zoning things we have to change that will never get changed. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk, please take the roll on sending the bill back to committee.
Councilman Lanning?
Yes.
Councilman Hopkins?
No.
Councilman Stichels?
Yes.
Councilman Foley?
No.
Councilman Arquette?
Yes.
Councilman Colford?
No.
Councilman Paplaskas?
No.
Councilman Ricchio?
No.
Council President Scoott?
No. Okay, so I have a motion to approve the ordinance still on the table. Under discussion on the original ordinance. There being none, clerk, please take the roll on the cultivation ordinance.
Councilman Lanning?
No.
Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilman Stichels?
No.
Councilman Foley?
Yes.
Councilman Arquette?
Yes.
Councilman Colford?
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council President Ricchio?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, now an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 17 of the Code of City of Cranston 2005, entitled Zoning, establishing the Garden City Development District. Have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Under discussion, Councilman Hopkins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Being a resident of Garden City for many, many years, I'm very concerned about some of the things that were brought to the attention by our neighbors tonight. Keep in mind that I did go and talk with many of the neighbors of Garden City. I actually went in some of their houses today. I walked the property, and they do have some legitimate concerns. And as a result of that, I would like to propose an amendment that Midway Road be considered residential only, and I would like to see a height restriction of no more than 35 feet as a compromise. Again,
I'll second that amendment.
I have a motion and a second under discussion. Just to reiterate to the group, Councilman Hopkins has said Midway Road will be residential only and have a 35 feet height restriction. In the current ordinance, it states that it can be I believe, 50 feet and have light retail under it. So this would restrict it to 35 and residential only. Under discussion. There being no discussion, Councilman Paplowskis.
Yeah, I have a question through the chair, to maybe Director Lapola. Is that much different than what's on in this proposal now, than what Councilman Hopkins has proposed?
The current proposal, the ordinance is currently proposed, would allow residential or commercial with residential on top with height limitation of 50 feet and 3 stories of residential above the commercial. So it's you can get 50 feet, 3 stories of residential, 1-story commercial, or 3 stories of residential and no commercial, and a height limitation of 50 feet.
So this would cut it from 50 to 35.
That's their proposal, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to open this, Councilman Lanning?
All right, let's get back to Midway Road and the residential. Right now, it's commercial. If we make it residential, they can still put 3-family houses there, couldn't they? Along that whole strip of Midway Road. So what are we solving by doing this?
Councilman Hopkins?
Again, we're changing the restriction of the height to 35 feet. And we're eliminating any type of retail from that area.
All right, so if I can respond, so you're eliminating any type of retail, but you still can have 3-family homes at 35 feet of height all along Midway Road. Why don't we try to make it open space?
Thank you, Councilman Lanning. Attorney Murray, I have to open this up to public comment once the council is done discussing it, so the public can have their chance to hear to make a statement on 35 feet, so think about it. Any discussion from the council?
Should I do? No. I have another amendment, but I'll wait until we vote on this amendment.
Thank you. There being no other discussion on the 35 feet and the residential requirement, I would entertain the public to just come up, name and address of the record as per usual, and discuss it with us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Council President. We've sat here tonight, we've listened to the earnest feelings of neighbors. Garden City has never wanted to do this in a way that was not together with the neighborhood and try and seek compromise. I've listened to Councilman Hopkins' suggested amendment. We would be giving up the right to develop this as commercial. We recognize that. I could offer the technical language to the clerk when, if she desires, but the amendment to this ordinance would reduce the height, as Mr. Lapola just said, and we would eliminate the possibility of having any residents above first-floor business uses. So that amendment, we would understand Councilman Hopkins' concern. If I might just, through the chair, respectfully to Councilman Lanning, and he's always been a gentleman to everything I've been involved in. To make it open space is somewhat confiscatory. It would be somewhat of a taking of the property, and I'm not saying that in some litigious way, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, we have the right to do 35 feet of commercial. We can go 200 feet into the residential zone for parking. We're giving that all up. So, Mr. Wild has always maintained that if there was going to be development, on Midway, in his mind, his vision, the residential component would make the most sense. So, respectfully to Councilman Lanning, I would hope the council wouldn't take our property, and I don't think that's what the council wants to do.
Thank you, Attorney Murray. Any from the public like to speak on this amendment?
Hi again, Rob Santeri, 30 Egan Road. I just want, before I go on and speak, quick clarification. This amendment to make it 35 feet is only for Midlands, not for the rest, it's not for the entirety of the rest of what they want, which could be up to 100 feet. This is only for that one strip behind Garden City, correct? I think that's a good idea, but I think it just kind of brings home the point. How long do I have, by the way? Like 10 seconds?
It's not about time. We have to keep your comments
Okay,
germane.
so my whole point is,
Stop, germane to Midway Road.
Okay, Midway Road.
And then.
So my only point is, for Midway Road, I think it's a very good idea. I just wonder why not for the rest of it, but for at least for the 35 feet. That's just.
Come on up.
Thank you. Elizabeth Salzillo, 121 Poplar Drive. I look at my breakfast table, I look out the patio window, and there's the traffic light for the post office walkway. That's about 25 feet above the level of my house, the grade of my house. I'm 20 feet from my property line with Mr. Wilder. Whatever you put up there, even the cars tower over us. And you're going to put 30-foot building that's just a blank wall that's going to be right there on the property line, let alone all the possible stuff that might go with an apartment, trash cans. They're not going to be in the front of the building. What other mess and noise we have to put up with. Garden City was not designed to be a commercial center and a residential center. It was designed to be a symbiotic relationship between both, providing one and the other with what they needed. Midway Road is not an entrance to the shopping center. It's the division between the two areas. So please don't pass that. That whole area should be left alone. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close that section of public comment. Any comment from the council? Councilman Stichels.
If this amendment passes, does the ordinance need to be reposted and for another for the public?
No, as long as the state law and the planning director will concur, allows that any proposed amendment that is made does not have to be re-advertised as long as the amendment is opened up for public comment before being voted on, which is why the council president is taking comment after each amendment, so that we meet that requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
On the amendment.
On the amendment. Thank you, council, my parliamentarian in the crowd.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yes.
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 Yes. Now recognize Council Vice President Favicchio.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to offer another amendment, and I'd like to suggest and offer an amendment that the height restriction in the rest of the complex be limited to 75 feet rather than 100 feet. I've listened to, first of all, I think the larger height restriction now would be moved away from Midway, which I think is a very good thing. I think that some of the speakers spoke about some issues saying that we don't want to be like Midland Mall or some of the other areas. And I think one of the key elements to maintaining that center as a thriving center is some diversity of the type of buildings and the type of businesses you have there. So the apartments support the businesses that are there, support the restaurants, and don't create as much traffic as actually all of us that have to drive into Garden City. So I think that the concept that Mr. Wilder presented at the ordinance meeting was good in that it's an attempt to keep that center thriving and not allow it to decay, because certain stores do go out of business. One of the gentlemen mentioned that, and that's true. And that's why you need to diversify and keep it thriving. But I think 100 feet is quite a bit. I think 75 is really not all that big. It's only, really, I think, I'm not sure what they have right now. I think they can build 85 in the other section right now. So 75 is actually a reduction from what they have the right to do now. And I think this is all about what I think unfortunately for some people, they already have the right to build a lot of things there. If we did nothing, they could still do a lot of these things. So what we're trying to do is come up with something that will be more sensitive to the neighborhood, but not restrict them completely from doing what they want to do. They're giving up the commercial use on that midway, which I think is a very important use. Yes, they could build three-family houses, but I don't think anyone built, I don't know when the last time a three-family house was built in Rhode Island or anywhere else, but I don't think that's a concept that's survived since the last 75 years ago, maybe. So I think that that would at least lower the building size that may be near where Bank of America is, or some of the buildings in the center proper, and also protect Midway. I know Midway is not going to be completely protected. We have no way of doing it, I don't think, legally at this point. But I do think they would still have to go through a tremendous permitting process, and I think the water runoff is probably going to be the biggest hurdle for any development over there, and it may prevent that development, in all honesty. That's always been a concern, having been on the flood committee. But anyway, I would offer that amendment, at least to lower that expectation to a more reasonable number.
I'll second that amendment.
I have a motion and a second to remove the height from 100 feet to 75. When I open public discussion, I'll get to you guys, but I still have to go through the council discussion. Under council discussion, any councilman would like to discuss it? Councilman McCauley.
Through the chair, Council Vice President Favicchio, I think when you mention the height, I believe it's restricted right now in Garden City to, is it 40 feet? And across the way at Chapel View it's 35, 50, and Chapel View is 85, I believe.
Well, we'll ask Mr. LaPola through the chair.
Through the chair, Garden City is a C3 zone, so the height limitation in Garden City is currently 35 feet.
Yeah.
Chapel View, the height limitation is 100 feet. The training school, the height limitation is 100 feet. And Davewall, the height limitation is 100 feet.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? I'm going to open public comment on this amendment. Attorney Murray.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of everybody's comments here. In the spirit of working with the council, Mr. Wilder is advising me that I have the authority to agree with that amendment. We take it with the right, in good faith, that listening to the council, and we will make it work. I want to underscore, no plans for a 75-foot building right now. If there ever was, a hotel is most likely the likely suspect. Rigorous permitting process through city agencies. So we're not tomorrow going to break ground on a 75-foot building. Mr. Chairman, if I might.
You may.
There's a Scribner's error that I'm partly responsible for in the chart on the last page of the ordinance. And if Mr. LaPola brought this to my attention, if the council saw fit to just amend that chart, in the category of wall building markers on the side of a rear of a building, it says 1-2 square feet per linear foot. I think it was intended to say just 1 square foot, 1 square foot per linear foot. The dash and the 2 was a typo, and if it has to be done in the form of amendment, I'd ask that be done. Or it's just a Scribner's error.
Madam Clerk, Scribner's error or a motion?
It was clearly a Scribner's error, and I provided it to the clerk, and she incorporated it in the ordinance. I apologize, but Mr. LaPola brought it to my attention. So if we can just fix it, we'll fix it in the final version if it passes.
Okay, it'll go in as a Scribner's error, and she'll correct it.
Thank you.
Any more public comment on the height change from 75 to 100? Come on up.
Obviously, you've
100 to
chosen
75, sorry.
Brenda Mayette, 11 Bryant Road. Obviously, you've chosen what you're going to do, and it is a waste of time to come and speak before you and say, please do not vote for this ordinance.
My only public comment about 75 feet is it seems like a very arbitrary number because, you know, before it was 35 feet, so you're essentially saying we're going to double it still. And I don't know where that number came from. I don't know, you know, I think, and I know it's going to be seen like a compromise, but if it's a bad idea to begin with, then it's not really compromise. It's just getting you a closer way. So in the future, they can come back and be like, well, it's 75 feet, and now we want to 100 feet. So just some food for thought.
Can you just ask, what is the height of this exercise center now? I thought that it went beyond what it was supposed to be.
We need your name for the record,
Grace
please.
Cook, please. What is it, please? Grace Cook. C-O-O-K.
Her name is Grace Cook. Yeah, go to the mic.
What is the height?
Go to the mic.
What is the height of the exercise center, the fitness
Director
center?
LaPola, what is it?
40 feet. 42 with the pounds, 40, another 6 feet.
48 in total?
So it's 48?
48 in total.
You know that for sure? Like, I'm
I
asking.
just checked, but that's by variance, so that only that building only on that site gets to be that height. The general zoning ordinance is
35
feet for that district.
Thank you, Director LaPola.
Pauline D. Rosa, 97 Cypress Drive, Cranston. I just think that if you develop Midway Road with residential structures, where are those people going to be parking? There is not a lot of room. Those buildings would probably have to take up some sort of area very close to Poplar Drive residents, and I think that's quite unfair. Thank you.
No further public comment. I'm going to close that section. Under council comment, which I believe already closed, but Councilman Stichels.
I'd like to offer an amendment to Councilman
Yeah, we have an amendment on the floor.
I'm offering an amendment to Councilman Favicchio's amendment to change the 75 feet to 35 feet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second under discussion. Councilman Stichels.
Yeah, I think the argument that a lot of the residents have made about this being a blank check is, it may not be a completely blank check, but it's pretty darn close. And the argument that the developer is making that there are all these regulatory processes that they'd have to go through, and they would listen to public comment. There's a difference between listening to public comment and having the power and not having the power to do things. And if we go to 75 feet, they can listen to all the public comment they want to, and they can build a building of 75 feet, and the city council has no authority to say that's an inappropriate location, to force that force a change in location, say, okay, we can do the kind of bartering that's going on now. All right, you can have a few more feet, but you have to make the following changes. We had a situation in my neighborhood with the Stop and Shop where the city council changed the zoning to allow the Stop and Shop first and gave away that power. And we, as a result, had a development project that could have been a Stop and Shop. It could have been a lot nicer with a larger, a wider buffer between the Stop and Shop and the parking area and the residences. But once the council made that zone change, that discussion was over because the Stop and Shop didn't want to do that. And I believe Mr. Murray was the attorney for Stop and Shop. You certainly were on the sign. Oh, just the signs. Okay. My apologies for the error.
Councilman Stichels?
Yes.
I've just been informed by the director, the attorney, and the attorney that with an amendment and a second on the floor, we have to vote on the first amendment before you could make an additional amendment and make it 35 feet. So
That's from the parliamentarian?
It's from the parliamentarian,
Okay.
administration, and the other attorney.
All right, I will, then I guess I would urge people to wait for my amendment. Thank you.
Council Vice President Favecchio.
Thank you, Council President. I have through the chair, I have one question, either Mr. Lapola or Mr. Murray. Why is it that the Chapel View has an 85-foot restriction and 50 feet away it's much different? Is the zone that different?
Chapel View has a 100-foot restriction, and that basically, it's because Alex Nani building, whatever you want to call it, it's 100 feet high. So the original ordinance, I think, this was before I got here, the original, I think, called it for the 80 to 90. When they built it out at 6 stories with all the fancy stuff on top, it was 100. We changed the requirement to 100 feet. It's not 85, it's 100. And for both the training school and the Davol Center, the Citizens Building, they again asked for 100 feet. And the trade-off is density, height versus mass. The higher you go, the less the mass of the building, the more you can do with the site. And the city council supported that.
So, and one other question, I think you mentioned at the last hearing that if you build, the higher up you go, the more you have to go have for a distance between.
The current ordinance here, this ordinance, because it's closer in to the neighborhood, calls for the first 50 feet at 20 feet, and then for every foot that you go up, you have to add a half a foot setback from the property line. So at 100, it would have been 75. At 75, it's half of that, so it'd be about 65, 66, somewhere around there. It would have to be 30 to 35 feet, somewhere around there.
30 to 35 feet from any other structure or lot line?
So from a residential, from a property line.
From a property line. Yeah. So it couldn't go, so that Midway is out because we just did that amendment.
Midway, by your vote, if this passes, will now be 35 feet. So you can't put anything above 35 feet there.
And for the 75-foot restriction, where would the possible
anywhere on site other than Midway.
Other than Midway. So it would have to be, and it would still have to be 35 feet from.
It's 20 feet for the first 50 feet, half a foot for every foot after that. So that would be 12.5 feet. That'd be 32.5 feet. My math is right. I'm not a mathematician, so don't count on me.
Okay. I think I understand it.
Councilman Paplowskis.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I'll be supporting the amendment that Council Vice President Favecchio made. It's 100 feet, directly across the road. This is 75 feet. This is less, so I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councilman Paplowskis. Councilman Stichels.
Yeah, if I could go back to my Stop and Shop example. The point is that what I think is the sponsors of these amendments are trying to do is to look into the future and see what the developer might want to do, which is, that's worth doing, but you can't foresee every possibility. And that's why I think it makes sense to leave the zoning as is, and then when they have a specific proposal that they come to the council. Frankly, their general approach, as I said at the committee hearing, I like the general approach of mixing residential and commercial. I like the reduced restrictions on parking. So I think the general approach is good, but there are no specifics. So
Speak to the amendment, Councilman.
I am on the amendment. So we
You're talking
can't-
about
we-
things not germane to a 75-foot height.
100 to 75, that's...
Well, that's what I'm saying is that we can't foresee the future, so I would urge people to vote against the 75-foot restriction. And because we don't know whether a 75-foot building is any more appropriate than 100, because we don't know what the location is going to be, or the size.
Thank you, Councilman. I haven't spoken on any of this, so before we take the vote, I'm going to say that I think this shows that the council heard from a lot of residents. We think that it was a little too big in scope, and we're trying to scale it back to find a common ground between being business-friendly and neighborhood-friendly. So clerk, please take the roll on the Second Amendment.
No.
Yes.
No. No.
Yes.
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 Yes. We have an amended motion, an amended ordinance. I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended ordinance.
Motion to approve the amended ordinance.
I have a motion to approve the amended ordinance in a second. Under discussion? There being none, I'll just say again, I think this is a way to compromise between something that the planning department has already approved. We easily could have passed it as it stated, but the planning department has approved it, and we brought it back to hear the concerns of the residents. Councilman Arquette, if you want to add something?
It's discussion on the entire bill as amended. Am I correct, Council
You are
President?
correct, sir.
Thank you. I made some notes, and I just want to go over some things, if you don't mind. I just, through the chair to the developer, Mr. Murray and Mr. Wild, did you do an analysis of how many jobs that will be created on this project, roughly?
In fairness, Mr. Arquette, we have not done any type of economic analysis at this point. That would certainly be something that could be produced as we move forward. The immediate activities in the shopping center, as I indicated earlier, Mr. Wild has indicated, is that Phase 4, the area between New Park Freeman and Bank of America, is the next focus. Anything after that will come about after some careful deliberation. I don't want anybody to think there's going to be a rush to judgment here on what we should do next. They took time when borders closed in Circuit City and Linden things to find the right mix. Right now, our focus is going to be on Phase 4, which clearly will be 2 or 3 restaurants and 5 or 6 small retail units. Those will be jobs.
Okay, sir, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the bottom line, there's been no analysis. However, there's a potential for job creation. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
And my next question would be, could you summarize what type of jobs? I would assume construction jobs,
Right,
mason jobs,
sure.
electrical jobs.
Yes, in the first instance, in any expansion or redevelopment or repositioning of any buildings or new buildings, you look to the construction trades. I appreciated Scott Duhamel's comments tonight. We did provide a response to Mike Sabatoni and the Rhode Island Builders Construction Trade Council. We're pleased to say that we've been supportive of union shops. We're an open bidding shop in terms of we invite non-union and union, but the track record shows we've been very supportive of Mr. Sabatoni and Mr. Duhamel, so I appreciated him being here tonight to support the ordinance. The first phase of any project is construction jobs. Then when you look towards more permanent jobs, depends on the particular use, but there will be a combination of both full and part-time hiring that we've seen historically through the shopping center.
Yeah, my next question, Mr. Murray, was the community construction standards. I hope you adhere to that. Your developer adheres to that.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to go as far as Mr. Duhamel did, where we get into some type of prevailing wage thing. I'm not sure that's an appropriate role here for the council through a zoning ordinance. We invite all sorts of bidders, and our construction managers have been both union and non-union, most predominantly union. We are, in most instances, we're paying prevailing wages, and we've never had a problem with the labor standards that have been applied throughout the center in terms of construction. And I would certainly think that will continue in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I was just making general comments. The way I see this is Garden City is a retail place for the citizens of Cranston and the state. And Cranston doesn't want to show the rest of the municipalities that we're anti-business. I mean, we have an opportunity here to expand, to go into the 21st century and upgrade Garden City, create jobs, and the more business that comes to our city, the homeowner's property tax won't escalate. So the more business you bring in, the more taxes they pay. We've been very fortunate here in Cranston with the city council and our mayor that we hadn't had a tax increase every year. But if we're going to be opposed to development and business, the other side of the coin is your property taxes are going to go up. So it's one or the other. So we're going to try to meet this business halfway, and Mr. Hopkins and Councilman Favecchio put forth amendments to reduce the height, which I think was a good thing. But we need to develop and bring business into our city. Also, I think there was testimony about the 200 wild turkeys. My opinion, we should relocate them maybe to South Kingston, North Kingston, Jamestown. As far as the deer carry ticks. Ticks carry Lyme disease. So the less deer we have in the city of Cranston, the better off we are with the health and safety of our community. So if we're chasing the deer out, that's a great thing in my opinion. Thank you.
Councilman Lanning.
Hard act to follow. I've had Lyme disease, and I try to keep away from deer. Most of the people who spoke this evening are long-term residents of Garden City. They've been there 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. They're there. They know Garden City better than I know it. I don't come from Garden City. And better than everybody except Mr. Hopkins. And they came up with and the developer came up with a framework. Mr. Murray explained it to us. Their future, what they want to do in Garden City. Now, I also noticed the type of businesses you can put in that framework was like 140 different types of businesses, anywhere from educational institutions to animal hospitals. So you get a pretty broad range of what you can put in Garden City, which is good. It gives you diversity. But nobody really addressed the traffic problems. That's going to be handled down the line. Now, someone mentioned Mr. Carpinato it was Mr. Tomlins that said Mr. Carpinato, before one of the boards he was on, mentioned about exit off of Route 37 going into Carpinato properties. Well, that's great for Carpinato, but doesn't help Garden City. I think we're dealing with a couple of problems here. One's a quality of life. The people who live, especially in that hollow area, if you start putting buildings on top of that hill, their view is gone. It's going to look like the wall that Trump built in Mexico. You're looking at a big wall. And that's not right for them. I mean, their property values would decrease no matter how you look at it. I think what we have to do, and one last thing. Garden City, Mr. Wilder did a great job. Your company did. Prior to you, there was Flatley, and prior to you, there was another company. You can go back to Malacaro. If Wilder Company decides to sell this property tomorrow to another company, all these restrictions and all these ideas that Wilder and Mr. Murray have come forward with us saying, we're not going to do that, we have no plans on doing that, another entity may come in and say, oh no, we're going to do all that stuff. And the heck with the people who live around us. That's why I think we should either send this back to committee and redo it, or vote it down, because it's not helping the residents of Garden City at all. Thank you.
Anybody want to follow that? Councilman McCauley?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make a point that I appreciate what Mr. Murray has done here. He's gone out of his way as did Mr. Koschel, to show us these plans. Unfortunately, I didn't get the whole picture at that time when I thought it was something that I would be positive about. I've been going, I want to correct Councilman Lanny, I've been going probably longer than anyone to Garden City. I've been going there for 61 years. I used to ride my bike. It's just tremendous memories, and I owe it to the people of Garden City and my constituents to vote against this. Thank you.
Councilman Stichels.
I guess what I don't understand is why members of this council, some members of this council, want to give up your power. I mean, we have the power. We were elected to have the power to influence projects like this on behalf of the public, to try to balance the interests of the developer with the interest of the public. But instead, what we're going to do is give the developer, what's being proposed is to give the developer a blank check to put these buildings where they want, without any consideration of the public's opinion or of the council's opinion. And the proper way to do this, and the way the system is designed, is you set zoning requirements. Someone who wants to change the zoning requirements comes in and makes a proposal. Here's what I want to do, and then you evaluate it. So I just can't understand that, and I think that this is a mistake, and it's going to be a mistake that down the line when either, as Councilman Lanny says, the property is sold to someone else, or Mr. Murray keeps saying, oh, we're going to do things that are tasteful. Well, one person's tasteful is another person's horrible, and that's what we're supposed to be making a decision and balancing on. So I will also be voting against this, as I voted against the Carpianato proposal for the same reason, and I think we've got to stop voting zone changes unless we know what major zone changes, unless we know what the plan is. And 75-foot buildings, which could be commercial, incidentally, there's nothing in here, I think, that restricts it to residential. I mean, could be office buildings. That's a big change. That's a big change, whether it's 75 feet tall or 100 feet tall. So I think this is not a good ordinance, and I'm sorry that the mayor proposed it and that it's getting a lot of support from the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone's spoken in the council that wants to speak. Before I close council comment, I'm going to say a few words. I was elected to this council as a leader, not as a developer. There are qualified planners who work for this city. Things go before the planning department, they get a recommendation. The planning department reviewed this ordinance as it was written and said, council, approve it. We heard the concerns from the residents. We made changes to it to make it less impactful on the residents. That is our job, to listen to the experts, because we are not development experts. We need to ensure we have a proper tax base, so every year we don't have to go back to the residents and ask for more money. That's why the city has been so solvent, because we've balanced the needs of taxes, business, and residents. To say that this will change the entirety of this structure, of this business, is completely off base. This business is owned by, I believe, a pension fund whose job it is to make money for their pension. And the Wilder Group is here to make money for the person that owns it and do the right things to make sure they are good neighbors for the residents. So I urge the council to support this. Clerk, please take the roll.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Moving on to the Finance Committee. Council Vice President Vecchio.
Thank you, Council President. The Finance Committee met and recommended the following items. First, we have the, let's see, resolution. We've got to go with the first one here. The real estate tax abatements first.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
No?
this is not procedural,
No.
even though it's, okay. I guess this is not procedural, so. Okay, all right.
I'm sorry? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have the resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatements. This was unanimously passed in committee.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have the resolution authorizing tangible abatements. That was passed unanimously.
Motion, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have the tax interest waiver approvals.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the denials.
Second.
Oh, approvals. Motion to approve the approvals.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And lastly, we have the tax interest waiver denials, which was approved unanimously.
I would love a motion to approve the denials.
Motion to approve the denials.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have 1-1703, ordinance and amendment of Title II, Code of the City of Cranston, 2005. This deals with administration and personnel, municipal court judges' salaries, sponsored by Council President Farina. This was unanimously, I think it was unanimously approved.
I'll entertain a motion to
committee.
approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Under discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
That concludes the finance.
We got one more, Council.
One
Council
more?
President. 11704.
Wait a minute. Skipping 117.
We've already done the other
Oh,
ones.
04. Ordinance amendment of Title 2.40-.020, municipal court. This was the council qualifications of judge of the municipal court, sponsored by Council President. It was approved unanimously.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion made. Second.
Second.
I have motion and a second. On discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Claims Committee, Councilman Colford, I believe there were 4 claims settled out of committee.
Yes, Mr. Council President, they were all settled out of committee.
Thank you. They're here for your recollection and review if you'd like to review them. Under public hearings, this is open to anyone who would like to speak on anything they want. Come on up, sir. You've been very patient tonight hearing a lot of stuff, so the floor is yours. Name and address for the record.
My name is Jordan Bruno, and Council President, through the Constitution and freedom of speech, I am not a resident of the city of Cranston. I would still like to speak.
Anything you want.
Thank you, sir. Just bear with me. I'm only here tonight to rebut. I was at home watching you guys on Cox Cable, and because I love politics. I grew up in the city. I went to George J. Peters, went to Hugh B. Bain, Cranston West. I grew up in the best ward in this city is Ward 5 in the Knightsville section. I'm very proud of that. So growing up, and I'll get to the point, people look up to movie stars, they look up to sports heroes. I went to politics. Started with John F. Kennedy, Michael Seepy, Peter Pastore, Frank Mastrati, also former, I know I'm going old school, but this is when I was growing up, Michael Trafficani, and my father always told me, don't go with always the party, go with the person. And it also a person I like to recognize too, growing up, there was nobody better than running a political campaign than John Lanny. He was awesome. I'll tell you, he had the pulse, he knew what the people were thinking, and I wish he ran for mayor. I still can't believe Ward 5 is Republican, but kudos to you. The reason why I'm up here is, like I said, I wanted to rebut. Someone had said I got in trouble. I'm a former school committee member. I was also, it was the clerk, it's now the vice chair. I was voted that unanimously. Someone had said, I was on the school committee, I'm very proud of that, because I wanted to get involved because of the people I mentioned. Also, Bea Lands, I can't forget her, and Charlene Lima, people I looked up to. So I wanted to run, I wanted to get involved. I won 2-1, I won my ward, I was very proud. Before that, I ran citywide against Joe Venetullo and Jackie White. I got crushed. They're 2 icons. But I kept at it, like you did, sir. So, all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, like I said, I got in trouble in 06. I was on the school committee from 01 to 02. While I was on that school committee, I did nothing inappropriate. I didn't do anything wrong. I held that post. I fought for the new elementary school up near Alpine, got approved. I fought hard for the expansion of Cranston West, got approved. I worked with Catherine Kahlo. At the time, we didn't have tablets. It was books. So one day, I'm in the elementary school, and I see 89, or high school, 1989, when I graduated, I saw my name. A student was using the book. So we fought hard, we got new books. So lo and behold, I left the school committee in 02 because of an illness. I had a young family, so I wanted to take care of my illness. I got in trouble in 06. I just wanted to make it very, very clear, because it's on Cox Cable and it's on tape. Someone said, oh, while they were on the committee, someone did something wrong. That's nothing but the truth. I just wanted to make that very clear. I love this city. I'm very proud of what I did on the school committee. Nobody is going to take that away from me. I got in trouble and I lost everything. I lost a great paying job with a good company in Rhode Island. I lost my marriage. But people don't think to realize that the paper sells papers to sell papers. There was no drugs involved, there was no alcohol. Well, what's up with this kid? I had mental illness. I didn't know it. After I got in trouble, I got help. So I'm on medication, I go to a great doctor, and because of my loving parents, because I lost, I don't know how many friends, you guys, I'm not gonna bring up what happened, but you can Google it if you don't know. But I lost everything. But no one is gonna take away what I did for this city on the school committee. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome, Mr. Monroe. Thank you for your service. No one else to talk from the public? Session is now closed. Election of city officials. None of them are here to take the note, but since we elected them at the inauguration, we can elect them again as a general, approval process. So I'm going to appoint Ray Koya as promote him from auxiliary judge to associate judge. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion is second on Judge Koya. Any discussion? No. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. I'm going to make Robert Regasta an associate judge to fill the other newly made position that we made earlier this evening.
Motion to approve.
A motion approved. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. No discussion. There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Now we'll appoint George Capello as the open auxiliary judge.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have motion and second on discussion. There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. I have audit committee appointments, John T. Semino.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion approved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Under discussion. There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. I have an appointment to the audit committee, Michelle Forcino. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have motion and second. Under discussion, there being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Stephen Chambron has been appointed to BOCAP as the majority appointment, filling the spot, I believe, of Anthony Moretti. Board of City Officers. Looks like there's none. Okay. Executive Communications. We have the report on hiring special counsel, so that's all set, and it looks like there's nothing else in the docket. Don't you have anything, Director Coop? No, I don't. Coop is all set. Council President Communications, second month of the council. It's been 2 long meetings. We've done a few hours each time. It's been arduous, it's been rigorous. You guys have really stood tall. To the new guys, it's not usually like this. Some nights we're out of here in an hour, but thank you for bearing with us and engaging in debate. The best thing about what we do is debate, and we talk, and we sometimes don't agree, but we always try to do what's right. I think everybody in this body believes in that. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us, and we'll see where the journey takes over the next 2 years. Councilmember Communications, Councilman Stichels.
Just wanted to get a report from the administration about the municipal court fees. I believe Mr. Strom thought that we might be giving the state too much money.
Mr. President, there was a question about that. Mr. Strom is looking into it. He was on vacation last week. He was out sick today. I don't believe he has an answer yet, but he is looking into it.
Do you think you'll have it by the Finance Committee?
I'm sure he'll try his best.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Coop.
The next item is the status of the personnel rule to award points to job applicants who speak a foreign language. I think there was a hearing in November. It's been 3 months since the administration said they supported this idea and would be proposing a personnel rule.
Mr. President, we spoke about this recently. I don't know if it was last month or at one of the committee meetings during the month. Councilman Stichels and I talked about it a little bit. He suggested I look at the situation in Central Falls. Unfortunately, I have not had an opportunity to do that, but I do plan to do that and see how they've done it. We still have some of the same questions regarding implementation despite support for the concept.
Thank you, Director Coop. Does that finish you off, Councilman Stichels?
The last item I have is the number of people tonight spoke about the condition of Narragansett Boulevard. One of them, Mr. Frank Justin, spoke with the administration, and he told me that the boulevard, that he was told by the administration that the boulevard was on a preliminary paving list for 2017, and so I wanted to get a copy of that preliminary paving list.
Mr. President, I listened closely to those comments regarding the request for paving on Narragansett Boulevard, and I was a little bit confused. The comments were not consistent with my conversation with our Public Works Director earlier today. There is no preliminary paving list. It's way premature for that. The capital budget hasn't been approved yet. There's no determination yet on how many, what bonds will be sold and what amount. So there cannot be a preliminary list at this point. Mr. Mason, the Public Works Director, did tell me, did discuss with me the fact that Narragansett Boulevard is one of the roads that will need to be addressed at some point, although there are drainage issues that need to be addressed, which would have to tie into the paving. And he also heard just recently from National Grid that they will be doing main replacement on Narragansett Boulevard sometime. So we would need to get some more information on that before we go and repave the road and then find out that they want to go in and dig it up. So all considerations that will go into the determination as to when the road would be repaved.
Do you have any idea when that might be?
He does not. They just told him it's imminent, but no time frame at this point.
Okay, because when people call me up and say, how do we get it from the preliminary list to the permanent list? And I say, I never heard of a preliminary list.
And I suspect their next call will be to this building, but that list has not been established. And obviously, if we can confirm that National Grid will be going in and replacing main lines, then we're going to have to hold off on paving because it just doesn't make sense to pave a road knowing that it's going to be dug up.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And the report on the legal fees, is that, I didn't get that. Was that handed out or? Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Councilman McCauley, I believe you are up next, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just needed an update, Mr. Coop, on the traffic signal that was lost when we had that tragic accident. I don't know if you have an update, sir.
I do. I have some information. I do know that the city was able to recover part of the cost of replacing the light from the driver's insurance company, the driver who took it down. It's not sufficient to cover the cost, but in the meantime, we are trying to get the rest of that money from the insurance company, and we have also gone out to bid for someone to replace the light. So we are moving forward with the replacement as well as recovering the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Coop.
Sorry, Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, Council President. I have two items, Council President, to the chair, to the administration. This last snowstorm, I was out and about, and I was checking on the private vendors, and many of the private vendors didn't have a logo sticker on their trucks designating that they were on city time. And I think you were on the council when we implemented that, Council President. I'd just like, through the administration, what's going on with the snow removal, private vendors, logos. I'll tell you why, because on 2 occasions, a vendor who was supposed to be plowing a public street was plowing a private driveway. So I think we need to be vigilant. Okay, Mr. Coop.
I will raise that with the highway superintendent. First I've heard of it, but I will check with the highway superintendent.
Thank you. One last item. I just got a call today about Presidential Manor dumping on Lincoln Avenue, so the residents there are upset. So if we could send somebody down there and check that out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll check it out.
Thank you, Council President. Under new business, I had told the city clerk earlier this week that under new business, I would like to have before the Finance Committee a discussion concerning monies owed Ken Filasky. I believe it's around $184,000 at this point, and I think we need a discussion to try to clear up this mess.
Yeah, my only caution would be maybe it should be an executive session.
Well, I don't care where it is, but it has to go before a committee, so let's do it before the Finance Committee, and as chair, you can call executive session.
Okay, I will do that. I have no problem doing it. I just think it needs to be an executive session.
Additionally, just one quick, I noticed on the legal fees, we got like $345,000 in legal fees, and Captain Gilbo is responsible for about $117,000 of that, almost a third. Does administration have any ideas when we're going to settle this case, or the beat marches on? Another executive session thing.
The matter is in litigation, Councilman. You know I can't comment on it.
I know, but I figured I'd ask the question anyways.
Councilman Hopkins, you got for us?
New business?
It's council communication, so whatever you like.
Just like to ask some questions, being the chair of Recreation. We never seem to hear anything at Recreation in terms of oversight on their budgets and where the money goes and what we do with that. And I'd like to address somebody with the administration in terms of maybe getting the Recreation Department to maybe appear before us every once in a while, or what is it that they do with all of the money that they bring in? Where does it go?
That sounds eerily like a finance question, Councilman Hopkins, so I would ask the finance chair at the next meeting, potentially put a review on that for us, so we can review everything that's come in and going out of the Recreation. Would that satisfy your inquiry?
Thank you, sir.
That's no problem. I guess we'll have to put that on the agenda.
I'm sure Mr. Lopolo would love coming to see us. Mr. Laboratory would love to come to see us one more time a year. I'm punch drunk now. 10:30, it's late, it's past my bedtime. Old business. There is no old business. New business.
Proposed ordinance 2-1701, an amendment of Title 10 of the Code of the City of Cranston titled Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Penalty for Overnight Parking, sponsored by Council Vice President Favicchio, to be referred to Ordinance Committee for hearing on March 16th. Proposed ordinance 2-1702, an amendment of Title 10, Chapter 32 of the Code of the City of Cranston, titled Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Night Street 2-hour parking, sponsored by Councilman Lanny, to be referred to Ordinance Committee for hearing on March 16th. The following claims to be referred to the Claims Committee for hearing on March 6th. These are all property damage claims. Leonard Upham, from an alleged incident on February 9, 2017. Michael and Carol Cody from an alleged incident on February 12, 2017. Brian Silver from an alleged incident on February 12, 2017. Eric McNamara from an alleged incident on February 12, 2017. Kimberly Raspalo from an alleged incident on February 12, 2017. and James and Marianne Wheatley from an alleged incident on February 12th, 2017, and Alfred Gemma from an alleged incident on February 14th, 2017.
Entertain a
That's
motion
it.
to send all the business to the proper committees.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Clerk, please take the roll. Under discussion? No.
Yes.
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 Yes. The City Council's next regularly monthly meeting will be held on Monday, March 27th, 2017. I want to take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There is miscellaneous business on the clerk's desk before we resign regarding the Oak Hill Playground and the mayor's response for your order. Now, let's take a motion to adjourn. Second.